In a world where voices are silenced, one man refuses to lie down.
It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
He's been punted not once,
40 years they've been trying.
not twice,
You couldn't fire somebody if they were horrible, doing a terrible job.
but 3 times.
You're fired.
He doesn't tell you what to think, but gives you something to think about. Welcome to the Bonafide Podcast with Luke Boner. And he's not
All right, here we go.
done
Hold your ears, folks.
yet.
It's showtime.
Well, hello there. G'day. Fancy meeting nice people like you in a place like this. Welcome to episode 89 of the Bonafide Podcast, where we get to 100. Well, it's up to you. It's up to you, but thank you for coming along for the ride. Anyway, some exciting news, millennial, some very exciting news. I'm a bit nervous.
Oh, it'll be fine. I've told Luke that we are going to do a little live next Thursday at around 5:15 a.m. So if you want to join in the fun, pop on by. We'll go live on YouTube and Facebook. So
We would love to get a call. We would love your input. We'd love your participation. It'll be like live radio again, Kelsey. Let me at it.
oh, fun.
Hey, listen, coming up, Australia's best crime reporter, in my opinion, is Adam Shand, and he has a fantastic podcast called Real Crime with Adam Shand. And Kelsey, do you remember Adam and I had a chat last year about the fact that the man who attempted to murder Lauren Huxley was up for parole, and it sent shivers up everyone's spine, thinking, how could this dreadful person who's never shown any remorse, never participated in any rehabilitation while in jail, could be out free? And Adam and I talked about that terrible, terrible case. And Adam thought, well, why don't I talk to Lauren and her family? And he did exactly that. And we'll have a talk about that with Adam Shand a bit later on.
We'll be playing a couple of those snippets in your chat. So if you want to listen to the whole thing, make sure you go and check out Adam's podcast.
But you'll hear a little bit. We'll give you a teaser coming up very, very soon here on Bonafide. A little bit later, we'll hear from Senator David Shoebridge, who is a Greens senator. And because we try and spread the love around both the Senate and the House of Reps, Senator Shoebridge is outraged at what's going on in Iran and the Middle East. He says this is Trump's war and it's completely illegal. He'll explain exactly why a bit later on. We're also going to have the Man Cave. One of our best Man Cave partners is Bill Edgar, whose book is going to be made into some sort of a mini-series on a platform we're not sure of yet. But we'll have some fun with the Vice Captain, Adam McDonald. And look, the Man Cave takes a couple of interesting twists and turns. You've got to stay with us for today's Man Cave. And Jonathan Kearsley, who is the bureau chief in Washington for Sky News, will join us with the very latest on what's going on in the USA. All that and more coming up on episode 89, the Bonafide Podcast.
We love the news.
Some breaking news or some headlines that have happened since last we spoke. One of our regular contributors, David Littleproud, head of the Nationals, Kelsey, he's given it away. He's staying in the party room. He will remain a member of Parliament and a dedicated member of the Nationals, but he's given the leadership away. And to use his words, Kelsey, he says he's buggered. You know, he has had a very, very difficult time. He's had a leadership challenge, which he fought off without any problems at all. But he's had 2 splits in the coalition in less than 12 months. The announcement apparently came as a shock to his colleagues. Kelsey, I've got to be honest, I'm not that shocked. If you're tired and you can't give it 100%, what comes first? The leadership of a party or your family?
Yeah. I think people were shocked because obviously David is, so passionate about the people that he represents and the issues that impact his people. And so I think in that regard, it is a surprise. But I also think that David is the type of man that if he knows he can't do a job to his best ability, it's better to give it to somebody who can. Being the leader of a political party sounds bloody awful to me.
Also, I think Barnaby Joyce and Jacinta Price jumping camp to do two different parties, two conservative parties, but two different parties. That probably made him think, gee, is this a chink in my leadership? If I was a stronger leader, I don't know if he asked himself those questions. Other people certainly did. But it's been a hell of a time, and he's decided, let someone else do it. Some sad news, 2 bodies have been found in search of 2 tourists missing in Queensland floodwaters. They were Chinese backpackers, apparently. Police have found 2 deceased people shortly after their vehicle was discovered in the Kilkilvan-Tansey Road, which is near Kilkivan. The residents of Chinchilla on Queensland's Western Downs are preparing for a potential flood peak today. God, if it doesn't rain, it pours, or we're in drought. It's an amazing country, isn't it?
I know, but remember this time last year we were talking about the floods in Queensland and how farmers couldn't get access to hay and the issues that were going on there. Obviously, this kind of happens every year, but the same issues persist. So I just can't help but feel terrible for the people that are going through this and going through it on an annual basis.
Yeah, and the other thing is when these isolated towns run out of supplies, who are the first people that get through? It's the truckies. And regional petrol stations are running out of petrol, but they're running out of diesel. And I noticed today, Kelsey, that the government has said any petrol station found price gouging could be up for fines of $100 million. And we're talking about the big petrol companies, the big companies. I wonder if is $100 million really a deterrent to those huge companies? And how do you prove price gouging?
I mean, they were able to prove it with Woolies and Coles, so they must have some method.
Well, maybe they can. It's been also very hard over the years to prove petrol collusion. But $100 million incentive not to price gouge is certainly there. But people are funny, Kelsey. The government has been telling us all week that there's no need to panic, that our shipments of oil and petrol are getting through. Every delivery has arrived on time. There's no need to panic. And yet people are still panicking. It's kind of like, Kelsey, COVID, which was a respiratory infection, and yet people stockpiled and panic bought toilet paper. There's one service station that suggested that maybe they're at the point where they're going to have to limit the amount of petrol that they sell per customer per day. They've mentioned $20. Well, $20 isn't going to get you much if you're a truckie trying to get diesel into your truck. And some cars burn $20 worth of petrol at a completely different rate to other cars. And I guess everybody that's bought a hybrid, and particularly an EV, is smiling now and saying, ha-ha, gotcha. I was right all along.
What's that saying, Luke? Biting off your nose to spite your face?
Yeah, biting off your nose to spite your face. Yeah, very good.
I think we both got that saying wrong, but you know what I mean by that. So it's like
cutting off your nose to spite your face.
That's it. That's kind of what it feels like to me, because like when people panic buy, that justifies price gouging, but then the people that have those stocks of fuel say, well, I was right, the prices have gone up, haha. And so it's just kind of like a vicious cycle. So I just think I can understand putting a limit on fuel for like everyday people, but I think trucks should be the first in line to make sure that they have what they need to keep the country
Get
running.
the deliveries through, particularly those petrol tankers that need to get to service stations. Yeah, I think you're right. I think the other thing that we're going to see soon is a lot of anger from people who drive petrol cars at the EVs and the hybrids who are not paying the fuel excise. Now, you've got to pay for fuel, different prices at different charges and different cost altogether if you charge at home. But the fuel excise in Australia, it's a flat tax and it's on petrol and diesel. And Kelsey, it is set at 51.6 cents a litre. That's a little more than half the price. So you buy $20 worth of petrol, $10 is excise. So the government's done it before. They've relaxed the excise in times of hardship. I wonder if they'll do it again. But my point is, it's only a matter of time till EVs are charged and taxed at a similar rate to make up for the lost fuel excise. I have never met a government yet that has let a tax go by. Okay, time for your say. To kick us off, Millennial, you had something you wanted to share.
Yes, and I am a little bit sick, so I hope I can get through this without spluttering all over the place. I will do my best. But Luke, I want to ask you a question. Do you know why pirates wear eye patches?
Yeah, because they often have a hook on one end and they get an itchy eye and it's gone. And then they learn.
Incorrect. What would be your second guess?
But that was good off the top of my head, wasn't it?
Not really.
All right, go on.
So, most people, right, think that pirates wear eye patches because they're missing an eye, right? But no one's ever stopped to ask themselves, what was happening in the era of pirates where everyone was missing an eye, right? Like, what are they actually missing an eye from? Because it's not hooks on hands. I found out that pirates actually wear eye patches so they can see above deck, but also below deck. So, you know, when you're like, you know, you're going around the house at the end of the night, you turn off all the lights, and when you turn off that last light, you're blinded, right? Because your eyes take like 15 to 30 seconds to adjust to the new level of darkness. So what pirates would do is they would wear an eye patch. So then one eye was permanently always in the dark. So then when they would go below deck, all they had to do was lift up that eye patch and they would be able to see in the dark immediately. Mythbusters actually tested this, and it is true.
I think it's a very interesting theory. I like mine better. That's very good, Kelsey. That's very good. There was a movie about pirates not so long ago, and not everyone could see it. Do you want to know why?
Ha, ha, ha. Something about the missing eyes.
No.
Why?
It's because it was rated R.
Oh, I knew you were going to say something stupid.
Interesting sign that you saw on the internet recently. It was a sign for an Eagle Boys pizza. I thought Eagle Boys had completely folded up and gone. You remember early on in our podcast career, we spoke to Tom Potter, who was the the founder of Eagle Boys. What's this sign all about?
Well, Frank sent us an email, and it's a post that somebody put up on Facebook in the Lost Newcastle group, and it's a photo of an Eagle Boys pizza sign, and it looks like a new sign. And so Frank was asking us, could Eagle Boys be making a comeback? Because Eagle Boys closed all of its shops down, definitely in Newcastle, by 2016. So, 9 years later, why is there an Eagle Boys sign in the window? Or is this just a 9-year-old sign that just no one thought to take down?
It could be worth a lot of money.
Maybe, but is Eagle Boys making a comeback? Do we want Eagle Boys to make a comeback?
Eagle Boys were very, very good pizzas. They were very good. Does anyone know Sizzler's coming back? Is Eagle Boys coming back? If you know something behind... Well, let's get Tom Potter back on.
Yeah, let's see if Tom Potter knows.
Kelsey, you got a voice message.
But I was following a car down the motorway, heading out to go and do some deliveries for the next day, and the wheel was wobbling that bad, I was worried about snapping the wheel studs and flying off. Like, when does the NHVR start looking at cars and some of the conditions they're in? Okay,
well, the NHVR is the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator. They don't look after cars. That's what the Highway Patrol and General Police is all about. So when you take your car for rego, it's supposed to be checked. If it's been checked okay and it's not, the mechanic can get into trouble and lose their licence and get fined. But that's what the police are for. Highway Patrol, general duties cars and every other cop car, that's their job. The NHVR, old mate, is for heavy vehicles, hence the name, National Heavy Vehicle Regulator. But it's a point.
Yeah, but why is there more scrutiny over trucks than there are cars?
Well, I guess so. There should be just as much scrutiny, and there is when you do your rego. But, often police will pull you over thinking that your tail lights are out, your headlights are out, that your registration plates, that your number plates are not visible clearly. So that's what the police are for. So if they're not doing their job, talk to the police.
I love Highway Patrol when they pull a car over that's missing a wheel. There was remember that one episode where that guy was, instead of a seat, he had a plastic chair?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I love that show.
So good.
And I'd tell you another show I like, RBT.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
old
so
now.
good.
I love that. And when they blow into the bag and it goes, and they're not going to tell you straight away.
No.
Nikki and I, we call that piss head roulette. And while it's spinning around, we guess. And Nikki will go 0.08, .2, you know how she does that with the gymnastics at the Olympics and the figure skating. You know how she's an expert in scoring everything. She loves to have a guess at just how over the limit they are. It's very funny. She's very funny to watch these shows.
The classic guy that's like just waiting for a mate, and he's
that was
belted.
a good one. Yeah, just waiting for a mate.
So belted off his face.
Yeah. So, episode 89. Here we go. Lots to come and lots of twists and turns. Something for everybody. And stay listening for more details on our live broadcast coming up next Thursday. Coming up, Australia's best crime writer and podcaster, Adam Shand.
Got the bluesy rhythm, but it's swinging my way. Oh, I got the look on a blues, but they're the kind that
We talk fairly regularly with Australia's best crime reporter, Adam Shand, here on the podcast, and he has his own podcast, which we're going to talk about in just a sec. Last year, when I was talking to Adam, we looked into the story of Lauren Huxley and her brutal attack by an animal called Robert Black Farmer. I was concerned, the family was concerned, Adam was concerned that this bloke was up for parole next year. And it sent shockwaves throughout the whole community, let alone the families. And so Adam thought, well, I'll talk to Lauren and her sister. He's done exactly that, and we're going to get into that now because it's just spine-tingling stuff. And our good friend Adam Shand is with us again on the Bonafide podcast. Hello, brother. How are you? Good to see you got your hat on.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Great to be with you again, mate.
I know that Lauren has no memory of the day she was confronted by this bloke, this stranger in her home. However, there's plenty of memories now concerning how she's moved on with her life and how this bloke's completely unwarranted attack has affected Lauren, her whole family, and I reckon the whole community and anybody who listens to your chat with Lauren and her sister, Simone, are going to hear exactly how this effect has trickled out and continues. So, mate, congratulations on your chat. It's just spine-tingling stuff. Well done.
Thanks, mate. I've also got to thank you for the idea. I just surfed off the back of your idea, mate, when we were talking about this, and then I saw on your very well-populated Facebook page for the Bonafide that Simone Gibson, Lauren's sister, was talking about the parole. And I thought, well, let's see if they want to have a chat about this. And fortunately, they did. And you talk about Lauren's not remembering the day of the attack. It's actually 3 months she can't remember. Wow. So all that period from when she was attacked, all the touch-and-go moments in hospital, she can't remember any of it. So she's had to learn all about this.
And it destroyed Mum and Dad and myself, just not knowing of, what your future was going to be, if at all. We didn't know.
Of course, and I am so thankful. I'm so grateful and thankful for everything, everything that everyone has done for me along the way. I'm just so relieved to be alive, There's so much,
you're a miracle.
I had to walk, talk and eat at the age of 19.
It was like watching a baby be reborn, really. It was really difficult for us to watch.
And I think that's a feature of the trauma that the family has suffered. Simone in particular has been the one who stepped out in front for the media time and time again when Lauren wasn't able or wasn't ready. And you talk about the trauma that a whole family has suffered. And Simone herself is suffering PTSD, been diagnosed with that. And the family themselves, this is just an ordinary Australian family. You can imagine yourself, people listening, how this would affect you. And the fact that she was so close to death and the catastrophic brain injuries that she suffered, she's gotten through that. But the lingering trauma that goes with that, and now the idea that Robert Black Farmer could be eligible for parole after just 20 years is profoundly scary to them. And I think what's really scary is just being confronted with a system that wants to let this bloke out. Sometime in the next 4 years, Farmer, who's never shown any remorse, never held himself accountable, done no kind of rehabilitation in jail, nothing at all, will, unless something changes, be let out within the next 4 years. You imagine how the family feels confronted with that possibility.
And completely betrayed by the system. Now, as I said, this guy was a monster. Take us back through what happened. Lauren was 18. She catches a bus home from her marketing course at TAFE. It was November the 9th, 2005. She gets off at her stop and walks home. And she said, well, it should have been just like any other Wednesday. Take us through it, Adam.
Well, and that's where her memory ends. Because what happened was she's in the house on her own. The family's all out. From what police were able to piece together, this bloke has come into the house, chased her into the garage, which is a freestanding building next to the house, attacked her with a pair of Fibro-Cutters, striking her about the head with these large metallic objects, and then doused her in petrol, doused the rest of the house in petrol, and then set fire to the house. The only reason that she survived was the quick thinking of New South Wales police officer Danny Eade, who really is a hero in this whole situation. He saw Lauren's body in the garage, at first thought it was some sort of mannequin or something, and realised it was a person, and that's what saved her. For the next 3 months, it was touch and go for her. She had many skull fractures. She had hair ripped off. This bloke did a complete savage number on her, and it was a miracle that she didn't die, Luke.
He, as you said, has shown no remorse, admitted no guilt, and hasn't sought any kind of rehabilitation. He says he's innocent. Is there any chance that they've got the wrong man?
Boy, that's a tough one, Luke. He was found guilty beyond reasonable doubt, and that was because his DNA was found in critical places at the crime scene. He failed to explain how his DNA came to be on the crime scene. He did give evidence, which is unusual in these situations where someone who is so obviously guilty still has the gumption to get in the witness box and compound the family's trauma. But he'd rushed off to a friend's house and told someone he'd done a terrible thing. He didn't say what it was. So I think we can have very little doubt, and certainly nothing beyond reasonable doubt, that he was the perpetrator. And he was given a 24-year sentence with 20 years non-parole. I think he was lucky. He really was. And here we are now, 20 years later. And that's the funny thing, Luke. It's just this time has gone so quickly for the Huxley family. Suddenly they're looking at the possibility of this bloke coming out. And it does revive all the fears they've been suffering for many years.
He doesn't care for what he did, his crime. He just hasn't shown anything.
He didn't admit to guilt, nothing.
Nothing, not a thing. Yeah, he was a career criminal. He was on bail and parole when he attacked my sister. So how we could let this person out again before his time, his full sentence, is beyond me. The fact that he hasn't even come up for day release, it's hard to comprehend that he could actually then possibly get parole.
I know Simone and Lauren's parents, Christine and Pat, said it was like watching a child be reborn again with her recovery.
It really was. She had to learn to walk and talk again. She went through many, many operations. As her physical recovery progressed, she had a much more long-term psychological recovery to make. What struck me in our interview with Lauren was her, what's the right word? She's got a sense of joy about where she is now. She's working, she's having relationships, she's independent, she drives a car. All these things were completely almost unthinkable in that 3 months where she was undergoing her recovery. So that was really heartwarming. And she's cheeky, she's got a great sense of humour, and she's lived life in joy, in defiance of what her attacker did to her. And I think that's a lesson for all of us as we deal with our small problems in life, and you see how she's tackled this massive challenge in her life. It is very inspiring.
You talk about the impact of crime on families. Take us through that.
Yeah, one thing, Luke, that I've come to believe after all these years doing crime journalism is that the The victim and their families are not represented in the court. The judge is there to run things. The prosecutor's there to prosecute on behalf of the Crown. The defence is there to defend the perpetrator. The victim and their family is an incidental onlooker to this whole process. When the accused wants to make a point, he turns to his defence barrister and says, "Can you say this?" The family and the victim don't have that luxury. They have to sit there and when you realise that I've sent some tremendous police officers over the years, some great prosecutors, but they're there for the Crown, not the victim. And the same is the case in the parole system all these years later. If Farmer is denied parole this time, he can appeal. That avenue is not open to Lauren and her family. If he's let out, they just have to accept it. They'll be notified. I mean, there may be some monitoring, electronic or otherwise, of this bloke, but there's very little that the family and the victim can expect out of the system. It is not geared for the victim and their families.
What does Lauren's family, and Lauren, take us through all of this, what do they feel about the system and the lack of justice? Because this bloke was on bail and parole when he attacked her.
That's right, for offences of violence. He is an unrepentant, angry, disaffected, isolated person, and I'm sure 20 years in jail has not helped that whatsoever. And he's taken no opportunity to do any training, to do any psychological rehabilitation, if you like. He's not been eligible to do any day release because he's done no training, anything else like that. So he's just an incarcerated person who's institutionalised, who gets let out into society eventually with very little monitoring. So in our discussions, and we had long discussions before the interview, I said, "Have you had any legal advice about what's coming?" And they said, "Well, no, we've spoken to the victim support unit and they've given us some guidelines." I said, "Well, again, that's great." So I actually hooked them up with my soon-to-be son-in-law, Tangi Mwalambwe of Sambi Legal up in Brisbane, who took them through the whole process. Mm-hmm. And his advice was to take up every opportunity to fill out the victim impact statements, put all the media that you've done into that process. There's actually a petition on change.org. So use all avenues to present the information before the parole board. You know, I have to say, he's a long shot to get parole, but stranger things have happened. So it's really up to the family to make the best presentation they can so the parole board understands what the stakes are. We've seen too many people get parole and come out and reoffend, and too many people who've not shown contrition. And I think, Luke, really, this is probably a radical statement here, but I think it's time to consider this aspect of contrition and remorse in these cases. And if these people don't show any remorse or contrition, then why should we let them out? There's been a change in society. Previously, virtually all our inmates came out eventually. But we're now seeing a slight rebalancing of the argument here, that some people don't deserve their freedom. And we've seen that, for instance, Julian Knight here in Victoria, the Hoddle Street killer. He's never coming out of jail. We're seeing more and more people who've committed these sort of heinous crimes, and obviously Knight was a murderer, Farmer was a terrible assailant. But what happens if he comes out again? Does he kill the next time? Yeah. So the society has to have some guardrails, some precautions to know we're not just giving this person liberty at risk to the community.
It's amazing, isn't it, how the victims end up being treated like second-class citizens, and they're the ones that live with this. And I'm thinking now about our good friend Victor White and his daughter Cindy, that we've been quite close to, and Vilene White, who was violently killed by a then 16-year-old, is now arguing that his sentence of 16 years is manifestly excessive. And you know what? The families are being kept in the dark about the whole process, and yet Vilene White lost her life. This guy pleaded guilty. Yes, he was 16, but it was a violent crime with a knife when she happily handed over the keys to her Hyundai. And now he's appealing the sentence and he pleaded guilty. But the families sort of have to trust that they're given inside information. They're kept out of the loop, and that's a terrible insult, I think.
Well, you're right. There are 2 points there, Luke. You say they're treated as second-class citizens. If only that was the case. They literally have no standing in the process. They're not recognised. It is a optional extra, this information going out to the victims' families. You see it in certain individuals, cops and so forth, that do it very well. Others don't. So no standing in the process. That's got to change. Vilene White's case is a really good case in point of the system bending over backwards to give the violent perpetrator a leg up. In that case, this was so egregious. She was handing over the keys to her vehicle. She was not struggling. And then the perpetrator, who we can't name, again, I think that's a flaw in the system. This person was 17. It's not a kid. At 17, you're an adult. This person stabs her in the heart, Luke. He brought a knife along to enforce his will. His defence barrister says, oh, this was a moment of madness. No, it wasn't. He brought the knife along, fully prepared to use it, and he used it and killed this poor woman.
In front of her 6-year-old granddaughter.
Yeah. That aggravates the situation. It is totally egregious. And let me say, I hope that the judge gives him more. This is when you roll the dice and try to appeal a sentence like this, you do run the risk of getting more. And I think their argument is exceptionally weak. And I think they should have accepted the 16 years and just got on with trying to make their life again. Because here's the thing about this, Luke. If you've killed someone at the age of 17 and you show no remorse and you go into jail and you appeal that and you feel the world's done you a terrible turn, taking away your freedom, what happens when you come out? You've already killed. What's to stop you doing it again? We need to make sure these individuals thoroughly monitored, and any release comes with electronic monitoring and post-release psychological testing as a condition of any parole in the future. But I would say for this miscreant, the killer of Vilene White, 20 years would not be unjust. I think the community would support a sentence like that.
See, just explain to me this, for example. Ivan Milat, who died in 2019 from memory, he went to his grave never admitting guilt. And his only defence was, it wasn't me, I don't know who did it. But overwhelming evidence, never admitted guilt. Never took part in any rehabilitation programs, top security at Goulburn, and went to his grave, but never admitted guilt. Obviously, these people are psychologically out there.
Well, the evil mind seeks any form of control that it can find. And Milat's a classic case in point. Derek Ernest Percy's another, killed several children, never admitted what he did, never took any rehabilitation. On his deathbed, chose not to give up any more information. Milat's the same thing. I mean, Jeremy Buckingham, the independent MP for New South Wales, is running the parliamentary inquiry, which is fast becoming the Milat inquiry. And we're looking at upwards of 20 people he may have killed. So the evilness, and we saw the same thing with in the Lynn Dawson case. Chris Dawson has never revealed where her body was. And we know he killed her. We know he killed her, but they don't reveal where the bodies are. And we've seen in New South Wales the no body, no parole law instituted there. That's very good. But I think no remorse, no parole would be in line with community expectations, which I think we're sorely missing at the moment.
Yeah. Look, just back to your podcast, Real Crime with Adam Shand. Folks, you must listen to his interview with Lauren and her sister. We'll go with Lauren first. How did she come across? Tell me about her. Let me get to know her a bit better.
As I said before, she had 3 months of amnesia. So Robert Blackfarmer is a stranger to her, even after all these years. She has no memory of the incident, no memory of the fear. So she's had to hear from police and prosecutors, her own family, about what happened to her. And I think this has created, it's a positive and a negative, that she's not had to deal with the post-traumatic stress of the attack, But I think she's also had to learn to be herself again, or another version of herself. And what I was really touched by was her gratitude to her family for what they've done for her determination to get as much out of life as she possibly can and deal with all the things that we just take for granted, you know, relationships and traveling, and she makes the most out of life. And what I was really impressed with is she and her sister Simone are going to be giving talks. They gave one for International Women's Day recently, and she loved it. And she's finding her voice. And for years, she was very nervous about doing interviews, and Simone had to do a lot of those for her. And so she's finding her voice, finding her confidence, and she's determined not to let this parole issue stop that. But she is definitely very keen for other families to understand what their family is going through at this moment.
He's not going to stop you.
No,
know?
no way.
No.
I've come so far, you know what I mean? And there's nothing stopping me now.
That's right.
So, you know what? I went through a lot before, but, you know, the rehabilitation, you know, talking, walking, eating, and recovery. But now I'm just going to live my life the way I want to.
The judiciary is supposed to reflect community standards within the law. Why so often does it let us down?
It's also bound by the common law, the precedent of things, cases in the past. And we saw this in the Violene White situation, where the sentence that perpetrator was given reflected what had happened before. Well, this is all lagged, isn't it? If you're using precedents from 10, 20, 30 years ago, when community standards were different, then there's going to be a mismatch. And I think it's time that we saw politicians come in and enact new laws to cover community expectations. And
well, then that's up to the punters. It's up to the voters to voice their concerns so that politicians can introduce legislation that reflects community standards today, isn't it?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. There needs to be careful thought about this, because there's an old saying in the law that when you have a law that's named after an individual, which we've seen in the past, it's bad law. It's bad law. And I think there's something to that. So there has to be less of this knee-jerk reaction, but a careful weighing up, a proper redrafting of the parole system, for instance, that says under what circumstances are we prepared to let this person, not on the basis of precedent, but what this individual has put forward. Are they rehabilitated? Have they undertaken courses in jail? Have they shown remorse? What's been their conduct in jail? That's taken into account to some extent, but there is a bias towards letting people out. People often talk about, should we have capital punishment in this country? And I think if you ask the community, that's a discussion that has to be had again right now. I'm not in favour of it, I have to say, but I think it's certainly a live discussion where someone has taken a life of another family, shown no remorse, shown no effort to rehabilitate themselves. Have they forfeited their right to life?
Yeah, it can be very emotive though, can't it? Because if you'd taken a poll after the death and the sentencing of the Anita Cobby murderers, for example, it would have been overwhelmingly yes, kill them all. But I think sentiment was the same around Lindy Chamberlain, and thank God we don't have it, because Lindy Chamberlain was innocent. Look, it's probably a bad comparison between those two cases. I'm just talking about the public can get very emotional depending on the case.
Well, they can, but you rightly raise Anita Cobby, and the killers in that case were savages and animals. Yeah. And I had the misfortune or fortune to interview Michael Murphy, one of the killers of Anita Cobby.
How did you get through that? Get through that?
Well, I was struck by his complete lack of reality. He was happy as Larry, living in the protection wing of Long Bay Jail. He died recently, but happy as Larry, living at the taxpayer's expense, doing nothing. He was never going to get out. He had no useful position in society, no remorse for what he did. Why does such a person have any right to life? As I say, I'm I'm not for capital punishment, but I think it's time that we looked at keeping these blokes in jail is $100,000 a year per person. Is that money well spent when they don't express any remorse, that they don't show that they want to rejoin society as a functional member?
Maybe you and I can talk about what happened to Anita Cobby on another broadcast, because I'd be very keen to listen to your interview. That would be just fascinating. It's the most horrific thing in my memory. Anita Cobby, she was just 26-year-old and she was kidnapped and she was sexually assaulted, raped and eventually murdered. And it's the most, it's just nightmares. And I'd love to talk about, John Travers, Michael Murdoch, the Murphy brothers, Gary and Les Murphy, and the trial and how it has really scarred Australia's innocence to this day. Do you agree?
Oh, no, absolutely. And Travers was a charismatic manipulator who surrounded himself with morons, like the Murphy brothers, who would do his bidding. And in a savage bloodlust, they picked an absolutely innocent person in Anita Cobby and perpetrated one of the most awful crimes. But there are a string of those, Luke. We could talk about Virginia Morse. Remember that case? The individual who was, I'm not even going to use his name, he went to jail for that, and there were two of them. She was a country woman, and she was savagely, she was held hostage for some time, tortured and finally killed. And one of the perpetrators of that crime is still appealing, still trying to get out. He's changed his sex now. He's being held at the community's expense to indulge his sick desires. I don't think that. I'm starting to persuade myself that capital punishment is a good idea as I talk to you more, Luke. But I think it's got to be a full-on discussion about what we do with these people in the long term, because, as I said in the past, most people get out, and Robert Black Farmer will get out eventually. Are we happy with this, where there are no safeguards beyond some pretty flimsy ones? And the person shown no remorse. So I think we have to have a proper discussion about that and whether that's in the community's interest. Do we have to build new jails where we put these people who are never to be released? And do we have to look at more people never being released? Because I really think that we have to judge these people on how they present. Are there prospects of rehabilitation, or did they go into jail having never been habilitated? So is there something we can work on here, or do we have to say, no, we now have to incarcerate them in perpetuity just to be safe? And I think the community has a right to be safe, and they have a right to have a standing in the process. And I think that also needs to be adjusted. I would like to see a lawyer, for instance, for the family as an option to argue when it comes to sentence, when it comes to parole, when it comes to these things that affect the family directly. Because unfortunately, the Crown process is all about the community, doing justice for the community. It's not about the individual and the families.
Adam Shand, it's called Real Crime with Adam Shand. And let's keep a very, very close eye on this evil monster and see if he does indeed receive parole. When you interviewed Michael Murphy, and when you looked into his eyes, I'll give you an example. I once sat on a park bench directly opposite Fred Manny, and I was looking into that face of evil. He gave me the shivers, absolute shivers, and that's another story, which we can talk about again on another podcast. What was it like sitting opposite Michael Murphy?
I don't know about evil. I was looking into the eyes of a moron, frankly, who was beyond any kind of rehabilitation. He was exactly where he should have been and had to be in protection for most of his sentence because the other prisoners would have killed him. So he felt secure and safe. He was cracking jokes. He was humorous. He wanted to know what was going on outside. He did not seem to reflect any sense of shame about what he'd done.
All right.
None at all.
I can't wait to hear some of that audio, and let's do it down the track. Last question. Is Robert Black Farmer in general population in jail?
I believe he is, Luke. I believe he is.
He's still alive.
He's still alive. There are a lot of monsters in the dark places we don't want to go to, Luke, and they have to be manned. They can't all be put in protection. And, you can't put them in solitary either, because the whole process of rehabilitation should be from incarceration through to, in maximum security, through lower grades, even to eventually day release, this type of thing. So they gradually bring them back into society with a hope that they can become functioning members of that society again. In the case of Farmer, he's remained frozen in time at the moment he went into jail. He's made no progress. He's learnt nothing. He's shown no remorse. He's not reaching out to the family in any way. He's just doing his time in there in the certainty that eventually he will get out. That 24 years with a 20 minimum sounds a lot, but here we are. It's a minute. He's now ready to come out, and he will come out in the next 4 years. It's profoundly frightening, and I don't think he will. If there's any justice at all in this system, Luke, he won't get parole this time, but he is coming out, rest assured, at some stage.
Adam Shand, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Not necessarily pleasurable topics, but we need to talk about them. You are the best in the business. I've told you that, and everyone knows it. Real Crime with Adam Shand. Shandy, thank you so much. Catch up soon.
And might I say, Luke, that you've taken your feel for the people from the radio show into your podcast. You're talking about important issues that the average person wants to talk about. And I really thank you for that. And I hope that the next time you have a good story, I can surf off the back of that one as well.
Surf away, and I'll surf off you. You take care, brother. Well, the front page of today's Australian, Donald Trump says the war in Iran won't last long because there's nothing much left to bomb. We know that 3 commercial ships were struck. Iran has stepped up its efforts to halt traffic through the critical oil conduit. The International Energy Agency has agreed to release 400 million barrels of oil, the largest reserves distribution in history. And while so many innocent lives are being lost in this conflict, everybody in Australia is concerned about the future of our oil and petrol supply. But what's really happening, and what are they saying in the United States? Jonathan Kearsley is the Washington bureau head for Sky News, and he's on the phone live now. Jonathan, great to catch up again, brother. How are you?
Luke, always good to speak with you. Yeah, fascinating time here in Washington, D.C. It's been a frenetic last couple of weeks as President Trump enters into this conflict on Iran. And he started talking about a humanitarian mission. Now it's about military objectives, trying to find a way out of this conflict. But at the same time, as you mentioned, you've got the rising oil prices and concerns over what happens through the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most critical oil supply route.
Yeah, that Strait of Hormuz is a very, very valuable piece of real estate, isn't it?
It's hugely valuable because you've got around about 20% of the world's oil supply that is moved through that area almost every single day. You heard some significant language from President Trump today, in which he's essentially saying that just keep moving, just keep trying to get through. The US Central Command has been pointing out it's been striking Iranian Navy in the region, mining ships as well. President Trump said 31 or so of those mining ships have been struck. But clearly this is, look, it's a significant channel. The Iranians have said that they are threatening to shut it down if indeed the United States and Israel do not stop their attacks on Iran. They've threatened to price oil up to $200 a barrel. It's nowhere near that yet. But clearly this is a real pressure point. And it's a pressure point because this is no longer a conflict simply about the United States and Israel targeting Iran and Iran responding in and around the Gulf states in the region. Is becoming about the global economy, and it matters because it matters to people's pockets. You talked about Australians' pain at the bowels, and the Americans are feeling it here too. And President is hearing those concerns because he is in a political fight this year. It is the year of midterm elections, so he is all too aware. He's trying to alleviate those concerns by saying, look, the prices are going to come down. But at the moment, the Strait of Hormuz is right at the heart of it now. And this conflict is now at a precipice because President Trump is trying to find a way out. He's trying to find a way off. No longer talking about regime change, talking about military objectives. And now he is trying to find an exit strategy, a ramp off. And that's going to be the real question as we move forward over the couple of days and approach the 2-week mark of this conflict.
Yeah, and you've got to ask, how does this conflict affect Russia's oil supply?
Well, that's the other interesting thing with this is that clearly there have been sanctions. And I think that is why President Trump and Vladimir Putin spoke on the phone over the course of the last couple of days, in part about the Ukraine war, but clearly about the war with Iran, because a pinch on oil is going to affect Russia. It is really going to hurt Russia economically. We have seen reports that Russia are providing Iran with intelligence to try and target US assets in the region. Now, that would have been of significant concern to the Trump administration and to the president himself. Did he raise that with Vladimir Putin? But then the concern stretches beyond that to China, and how is Beijing watching how this conflict unfolds? It's been steadfast almost in its calls for the United States to essentially stop what is taking place in the region. It's been trying to vocally support what it calls the sovereignty of Iran, that the sovereignty of the nation shouldn't come under attack. So while we look at this as a regional conflict involving the US and Israel and Iran and Gulf players in and around the region, and now you've got Britain sending in the HMS Dragon, a warship into there, the French sending in the Charles de Gaulle, its flagship aircraft carrier group. This is far beyond a regional conflict because it has pressure points and problems for nations around the world. Oil is one of it, power is the other, and that's what the likes of China and Russia are looking at too right now, Luke.
Yeah, we were speaking last week with Professor Simon Jackman, who you'd know, Professor of Political Science at Sydney Uni, and he says his theory is that Trump is trying to get as much done as possible before those midterms because all indications are he's going to get hammered.
Look, if you look at the state of play as it stands now, there is significant concern among Republicans that they are going to lose control of the House. The Senate they may well hang on to, but right now what they have is a rare political power play, and that is they have the Senate, they have the House, they have the White House. So they have the hat trick. They have all three that you could want in US politics in order to try and get legislation through and to maintain power. Now, if Republicans lose control of the House, which there's every indication that things are going that way as it stands right now, then that's a dent, as you say, in Donald Trump's power for the last 2 years of his presidency. Democrats will block everything that goes through there. It will make it very difficult for him to get legislation through, to get bills through. That's why he's ramping through things like the Save America Act now, which is combining a whole raft of electoral reforms and social reforms around transgender identity issues through in one massive bill now, because he clearly sees on the horizon a concern, a problem. And that is why probably also he has launched these Iran attacks when he says he has. Now, he says and has claimed repeatedly that Iran was in, a matter of days of potentially attacking the United States of America, so he decided to go first. But the longer this conflict goes on from now as we edge closer to November, the worse the political problem could get for him. And he knows that, because the things that Americans will vote on come November might not be foreign conflicts, but they will be the economic impacts from them. So if they're feeling higher prices at the Bowser, if they're feeling higher energy bills at home, and it's linked to rising gas prices, rising oil prices around the world, then that is going to be a significant problem for him and for the Republicans. So he would be looking to an exit ramp out of this, but it's what that exit ramp looks like, Luke, and how you get to that. I mean, once again today, he has said he doesn't want to leave too early, but at the same time will stay until he gets the job done, but that will be very quick. So there's a number of sort of not misleading messages, but different messages on how long this could go. He needs to find a way out politically. The question is how and the question is when.
There have been a number of Democrats claiming, including Jasmine Crockett, and I noticed that Senator Chris Murphy are so concerned that this whole thing is completely illegal. What's the feedback there in the US?
Well, what the Democrats tried to do was essentially rein in the president's powers of war. I mean, the main issue Democrats had when this started was that Congress was bypassed, that an act of war was not put through them. Now, President Trump essentially tried to swat that away and say it was a use of his power and a matter of national security, and the argument was around the powers of the president using the military against the powers of Congress authorizing an act of war. The United States the Trump administration was using the word conflict rather than war, but the president has slipped into that language of war a number of times now. But it wasn't just Democrats concerned. You had American allies concerned. Sir Keir Starmer, Britain's Prime Minister, didn't initially go in to support the United States and Israel because essentially he said he had legal advice that what was being done was by international law illegal. There were calls from France for everything, for aggression on all sides to stop. So it's not just Democrats concerned. There have been allies around the world of the United States concerned about the action that the president has taken, but he has pushed through with it anyway. You are likely to see pressure still from Democrats as they continue to ask, well, what's the exit strategy? What's the strategy beyond this now? And those are going to be the questions that persistently get put now, because both a House vote and a Senate vote that the Democrats tried to essentially win, they did not. The Trump administration had wins on both fronts of that politically. But now the real questions being asked directly of the president now is, what's your plan out? What's day one in Iran look like? How do you get out of this? And there are other questions being asked of the administration too, because we've seen reports through the New York Times that is citing what it says is a preliminary military intelligence assessment that the United States was responsible for an attack, a strike on a primary school in Iran that left more than 175 people dead, according to the Iranian regime. Analysts have looked at video footage and said there was a Tomahawk missile used in the area. President Trump has blamed Iran for that strike, but at the same time said that there are other nations who have Tomahawk missiles around the world. Well, the Tomahawk missile was developed after the Iran Revolution in 1979. The United States never supplied Iran with the Tomahawk missile. So there are significant questions being asked of the Trump administration on that front. But realistically, I mean, the president said this conflict was going to go 4 to 5 weeks initially, 4 to 6 weeks perhaps. We're approaching 2 weeks. Now you have to start asking the questions of the administration of how do you get out? How do you get out of this? And we heard the president even being asked today, look, would he still be happy declaring victory if the Ayatollah's son was still in power? Now, he wouldn't be drawn on that, the same way he wouldn't be drawn on the question around whether or not the United States is responsible for the attack on a school in Iran. But there are serious questions that will come in the week ahead about the exit strategy, about the United States military objectives, and when the president essentially decides he's going to call time on this, because he's indicated that he will. He's indicated that's the power he's got. He will be the one that pushes the stop button, but it's a matter of when and what's his justification for it.
Jonathan, I know you're going to file for Sky very, very soon. One last question, and hopefully you and I can talk again. But what is the latest with the Epstein files? Because I know that there has been a bipartisan group of senators asking the government for more accountability on these 3 million documents that have been released. The department released these pages, but the Democrats and some Republicans in Congress have raised concerns about how faithfully it complied with the law.
Yeah, I think when you look at the Epstein files, it is questions that just will not go away. I mean, we have had Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton front the House Oversight Committee. They have testified what they knew about Jeffrey Epstein. President Trump, like Bill Clinton, had an association with Jeffrey Epstein. President Trump says he ended his in the sort of 2000s, and Bill Clinton says likewise he ended his lawyers, and both of them have said they had no knowledge of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes of allegations. There's been a push, yes, for the president to front the House Oversight Committee and provide similar testimony to what Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton did, to be questioned about his association and relationship. And we've seen the downfall of the likes of the former Prince Andrew, if you like, in relation to his association with Jeffrey Epstein, of Lord Mandelson, who was the British ambassador to the United States, over his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, it is the questions that will just go on. We've had Epstein's accountant today fronting a house, that same House Oversight Committee, as they try and get more and more people to testify. Now, the question is, are they going to get the answers that they want? Well, I mean, this is the issue that is just keep going to be pressed by both sides as they say that they want to pursue this on behalf of the Epstein victims. So, look, there is a long way to run on this issue, yes.
Oh, yeah.
How much it actually impacts voters politically, I think, Luke, is going to be the real question. The Trump administration, what is now the Trump administration, the Trump campaign, essentially went to the 2024 election, and there were members of that campaign saying, yeah, you know, release the Epstein files. Now, you know, we're seeing the release from the Department of Justice. It's a matter of politically, how much is this going to weigh on the mind of voters come November? I think it's more likely to be, yes, it will be a factor. Transparency and government transparency is a huge factor. The economy weighs front of mind for Americans at every single poll you look at. But yeah, absolutely. The Epstein files is an issue that just will not go away.
And none of us really know exactly what's been redacted in the name of national security. If there was something in the Epstein files that incriminated Donald Trump, wouldn't we have known about it by now?
Well, I mean, the Biden administration had the Epstein files as well, and they didn't release them. I mean, if there was something in there that suggested something, maybe they could have used it politically. I mean, the simple fact is we just do not know what is in the redacted bits of information.
No, we never will we?
It would be a dangerous area to speculate. You know, there's been issues with the names of victims being put forward. And will we ever see the full details, the full documents completely unredacted? No, I don't think we ever will. And there's reasons for that. As I said, they've been trying to obscure, and in some instances have failed, the names and identities of victims, or at least information that relates to victims. That's been a significant mistake from the Department of Justice. They've pulled back files in order to try and make those redactions. But you're looking at what is going to be millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of pages about an individual who was a convicted sex offender, along with Ghislaine Maxwell, and will we actually ever get to the bottom of exactly everything that was involved in that? Well, you know, maybe some of that is in the Epstein files. But as I've said, politically, look, this is an issue that isn't going to go away. There have been senior figures on, you know, the Democrat side who've now testified. There's calls for senior figures on the Republican side to testify too. There are now some within the Epstein circle who are testifying. And these questions continue. And then you've got the issue of the arrests of Lord Mandelson and of the former Prince Andrew in the United Kingdom. So this is just going to continue to evolve as more gets dug into by congressional committees, by law enforcement agencies, but there are certainly political ramifications and questions that won't go away.
Indeed. The Oscars, 4 sleeps away. My God, the security will be huge, won't it? I mean, if a terrorist group wanted to make its mark, attacking Oscar night would be a huge, huge benefit to them, wouldn't it? They must be shitting themselves.
It's an area of extreme speculation around that front. The Oscars always has incredibly tight security around it. It is the major night on the Hollywood calendar. It is being marked once again this year in what will be all of the glitz and glamour and the celebrations that the movie world has to offer, and the winners will be declared winners and the losers will be seen sitting with a smile on their faces. But when it comes to threats on the domestic front, we've heard some detail about this today. ABC News America cited a report, a warning, if you like, from the FBI that was sent out at the end of February that said that Iran was aspiring to launch a drone attack in the California area. There were no specifics on timings or who would be responsible or exactly the locations. And California's Governor Gavin Newsom was asked about this today and said, look, he was aware of the report, but at the same time he said, look, he's not aware of any credible threat at this stage, but they are working with security centres and law enforcement agencies right across the country. And we've heard similar reports of concerns about the idea that sleeper cells could be awoken here in the United States, the possibility there could be some sort of domestic attack here in the United States. And there is a real heightened security environment. I mean, the United States always has anybody who's flown through an airport in the United States in the last 20 years would know the security environment you go through post 9/11. But even now, like, there is another level to it. There is another level to security at major buildings, at major institutions, at major installations. It is a heightened environment, and Americans have been told, particularly, Americans in the Middle East have been told to be very, very careful. But you look at the situation domestically, and yes, there is an element of concern here. President Trump swatted that away today and essentially said, he's not concerned about the idea of Iran launching an attack here in the United States. Bearing in mind, too, he gets daily intelligence briefings from the highest intelligence sources in the country as to what credible threats or not credible threats may be out there.
So a little chance of a terrorist attack, little chance of breach of security, but a big chance if you offend a fellow nominee's wife, you might get slapped.
The old reference to Will Smith, who's faced a ban from the Oscars for the moment that many in the movie world will never forget, the slap on the face of Chris Rock as he then went on to win Best Actor. Look, I don't think we're going to see anything like that ever again in our lifetimes. But look, I think there'll be plenty of eyes on the Oscars come Sunday. It'll be another fascinating night that Hollywood embraces everything that the movie world has to offer, and there's a couple of Aussies in the running, so keep your fingers crossed.
Jonathan, always good to talk to you, and can we stay in touch?
Luke, tune into Sky News. We'll give you the latest from Washington, D.C. anytime on anything involving the United States of America and the Trump administration, and we'll speak to you soon.
We've spoken to Senator David Shoebridge on the podcast before. He's a member of the Australian Greens and was elected to the Senate as the party's lead candidate in New South Wales at the 2022 federal election. Last time we spoke, Senator, we got a great reaction because I try and talk to as many different sides of politics as we possibly can because I believe in balance. I think the number one thing we need to address is this war in Iran, and I'd love to get your thoughts on how involved Australia should get, if at all. We have sent some support aircraft. There's no admission yet that we'll ever have boots on the ground. However, it's affecting the whole world with the price of anything, shipping, airlines, and here in Australia, the price of fuel. And there is a great nervousness amongst Australians as to whether or not we have enough to get us through a week, let alone 2 or 3. Senator, your thoughts on what's happened in Iran. Was it about Donald Trump wanting to free a nation from a tyrannical leader and bring democracy and freedom to that part of the world, or is it all about geography and oil, or a bit of both? Your thoughts, please.
Well, I don't think Donald Trump much cares for freedom and liberty in the United States. I don't believe at all that he went to war with Israel on Iran for the freedom and liberty of the Iranian people. And remember, we need to look at Israel's motives as well. And Israel has a long history of wanting to cause the greatest amount of instability in the region. So it has, a relative power imbalance against any other potential threat in the region. So this was never about the freedom or liberty of the Iranian people. And there's been a pretty wicked campaign in some of the media, pushed by the Trump administration, pushed by others in the months leading up to the attack, to suggest that that's what it would be about, working with the Iranian diaspora across the world who are desperate. The great majority of them are desperate for freedom and liberty in Iran. They recognise the deeply oppressive nature of the regime. my party, the Greens, have been recognising that for years, supporting the Woman Life Freedom movement, supporting the listing of the IRGC as a terrorist organisation, years before Labor wanted that position. But that was just an attempt to manufacture consent for this war. It's never been about the freedom of the Iranian people. I think you need to look at this war in Iran in context with the war on Venezuela and the attack on Venezuela, two countries with two of the largest oil reserves on the planet, oil reserves which were not under the control and direction of the United States. They were regimes that were hostile to the United States. And with these two attacks, the United States has attempted, in the case of Venezuela, largely asserted control over where Venezuelan oil can go, being able to freeze off Cuba, potentially threaten oil supplies to China and other parts of Venezuela. And now they want to be able to do the same with Iranian oil. The United States doesn't actively need Iranian oil. They've got fossil fuel independence because of onshore production. But what they really want is they want to ensure that no other country with significant oil reserves can send them to another part of the planet without the US consent and approval. And, as this war plays on, we've seen 10 different reasons by the US, by the Australian government, for what the war's about. At one point, it was about destroying the Iranian nuclear weapons program. I thought Trump obliterated that in June, if you listened to him, of last year. But I think we come back to oil and power and economic dominance.
So the question everyone asks me, Senator, is why doesn't Australia have fossil fuel independence? Why are we so reliant on getting our fuel shipped in from overseas? And everyone's panicking at the moment. There's driveway road rage going on. People are hoarding. The government told us that we're fine. Deliveries are coming on time. Just relax. And yet there's mass panic going on and a huge spike in the cost. We'll get to our independence first. We only have 2 oil refineries, but we get our oil shipped in. Why is that?
Well, we do that because of policy choices. The previous coalition government oversaw the closure of 2/3 of our oil refineries. Not only did they oversee the closure of 2/3 of our oil refineries, they utterly failed to move us from independence from fossil fuels, foreign fossil fuels. If you really want to know the way we can have the greatest possible energy independence is we rapidly decarbonise our economy. I'll tell you a good thing about wind and solar, Luke. None of that comes through the Straits of Hormuz, wind and solar. We have direct control over our wind and solar. And the more we electrify our economy, the far greater our economic and energy independence will be. But this is a reckless policy design that's got us to this point, dependent overwhelmingly on fossil fuel imports. We export most of our natural gas. We're in the process of re-importing some of our exported natural gas. This is utterly bankrupted energy policy from the federal government now for decades, and we're seeing that vulnerability right now.
Do we have reserves of oil in our waters, in our territory that we can drill for?
Look, we have limited oil reserves. There was Bass Strait where we have oil reserves. That's a very mature field now, producing modest amounts.
It's gone now. It's gone.
It's gone. We have lots of natural gas, pretty much as much, an overwhelmingly large amount of natural gas, which we overwhelmingly export. We would have energy independence in a transition if we used our natural gas effectively. But, Australia, it's interesting, it's such a huge continent, but it doesn't have these large identifiable bodies of readily tapped oil. But, I'm a Green senator, Luke. I have a look at how we can have the greatest possible energy independence. And our greatest possible energy independence doesn't come from inviting another US multinational to come here and drill for oil. Our greatest energy independence comes from weaning ourselves off fossil fuel dependence.
Oh, I totally understand. And in a large degree, I do agree. But at the moment, renewables aren't as prolific as you would like them, and I'm sure they will be down the track. They're not reliable and it's not cheap. At the moment, we're relying on fossil fuels. So let's just keep it.
If you have a look at global oil, it's one major energy crisis, and we're seeing this price happening around the world.
It's heavily subsidized.
Global energy crisis.
Senator, it's heavily subsidized.
Well, it's actually that our renewable energies, if you just look at the market price of constructing a kilowatt hour of new energy, it is vastly cheaper to do wind and solar and backed up by battery, vastly cheaper than you have with coal or gas or oil. Heaven help us if we ever thought about that. So, look, I'd have to disagree with you. If the market says they won't build another coal-fired power station, they won't build an oil power station, they might build gas peaking stations, but, if you just go to your banker, they'll tell you wind, solar and battery storage is the cheapest by a mile.
Okay, well, we can agree to disagree on a certain level there, but that's okay.
At the moment, it's diesel, right? At the moment, we need diesel to keep much of our transport moving, and that is a real issue at the moment. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. We need to, at this point, our economy needs stable, consistent supply of diesel to keep core parts of our economy, our food production, our transport happening, and that's something that keeps me. People maybe should have thought about this before they supported an illegal war that threatens our energy supplies.
I want to get onto the illegality of this war in just a sec. But if we can just stick with petrol, because I'm keen for your opinion on this. There have been accusations of fuel companies, petrol stations, price gouging. And there's been an announcement today that those fuel companies caught price gouging could face fines up to $100 million. Is that a big enough deterrent for these fuel companies?
Well, I mean, just ask anyone who's going and filling up their petrol tank. It clearly isn't. Like the oil that has been used to make the petrol and the diesel that's currently available for sale, that was all bought at the world price weeks ago. In some cases, months ago, and before this price spike. So, I don't think there's any doubt that the fossil fuel industry, like it always does, seeks to profit from a crisis, and they're profiting from this current crisis. It's bad. This crisis is bad news for any fossil fuel corporation that's trying to export through the Straits of Hormuz. Of course, they can't get their product out. But for the other fossil fuel corporations around the rest of the world, particularly in Russia, for example, they're making bank out of this crisis, like fossil fuel companies always do.
Mm. The ACCC says there's not much they can do. Surely there is, but a $100 million fine, is that an incentive not to rip off the public? And you ask the public today and they will tell you plenty of examples of where they believe they're being ripped off. Senator, can I just get you back to something you said earlier about this US-based or this US-Israeli-based war on Iran being illegal? Tell us, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, under international law, one of the key elements of our, world order is you're not allowed to engage in wars of aggression. Like that is the sort of the ultimate crime, really. A war of choice, a war of aggression is the ultimate crime at international law for obvious reasons. That if, that's what led the world into utter chaos in World War I, led the world into utter chaos in World War II. And so the world came to a compact, basically, and said wars of aggression are the ultimate breach of international law. And the world will work and combine, hopefully, to punish somebody who engages in a war of aggression and prevent them. And that's exactly what we're in Iran. The rationale that the United States and Israel have given was to destroy an imminent threat from the Iranian nuclear weapons program. The International Atomic Energy Agency has said that's an outright bald lie. Donald Trump himself, just a week before he engaged in this war, said he'd obliterated Iran's nuclear energy program. There is absolutely zero evidence that is a credible basis for the war. You're not allowed to go to war against countries just simply because you don't like their leadership. That is also not, you can't just go to war against, as our government has said a couple of times, bad guys. Like that is a recipe for utter chaos in the world order. And it's not a basis for a war of aggression, a war of choice. And the third reason that the United States said that they went to war against Iran was because they said, well, look, we've put all of our troops all around Iran. We've got all these forward deployed aircraft carriers and bombers and fighters and troops already. And because they're all around Iran, and we think Israel might do a preemptive strike and attack Iran, if Israel strikes and hits Iran, well, then our troops, because they're deployed to attack Iran, are vulnerable, and we're worried they will be struck by Iran. So therefore we had to attack them. None of those stack up under international law.
Okay. let's look at that aggression versus or offense versus defense. And the Israeli president was here in Australia recently, but has spoken all around the free world, Isaac Herzog, who has said Israel is not aggressive. Israel is defensive. The reason they're going into Lebanon was to wipe out Hezbollah, which is attacking Israel. Same thing with Iran. Iran is sending bombs and drones and missiles into Israel. We are protecting Israelis. Your comments on those comments?
Well, Iran hadn't been sending any bombs or drones or missiles into Israel. I mean, that just hadn't been happening. And I'd always be very careful at trying to accept at face value claims that the Israeli government is making. They are the single largest source of aggression in the region. That's not to say Iran isn't also a source of aggression. It has third parties operating including
Russia.
Well, I mean, I'm a party of peace, right? I have condemned and we have condemned Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine for the exact same reasons we are condemning the United States and Israel's illegal invasion of Iran. We're an equal opportunity peace party. We believe in peace around the world. And the idea that what's happening at the moment in Lebanon, for example, where the UN's most recent report says 750,000 people have now had to flee and are homeless as a result of a massive bombing and missile campaign by Israel in Beirut, in southern Lebanon. Last time I checked, there were close to 500 Lebanese who have been killed in that bombing campaign. That dwarfs the numbers who have been killed in third countries as a result of Iran's illegal missile and drone attacks, dwarfs it, what's happening in Beirut and southern Lebanon. And there's decades now of Israel doing grossly disproportionate, extensive violence, illegal occupation, killing and bombing of civilians throughout Lebanon. If you're going to suggest in any way that what Israel is doing is legitimate or proportionate or lawful in Lebanon, I'm just going to have to disagree with you, Luke. I was in Lebanon and Beirut in September of last year. They were trying to rebuild their society. They were looking forward to a free and open election sometime in this year. They'd had a period of relative peace, and now it's all been blasted, hundreds of deaths, mass dislocations by yet another Israeli assault. It's appalling.
If you look at proportionate casualties and civilian casualties, I guess that's an event that happens in any form of conflict. And you could look at all the innocent lives that died during World War II fighting Germany's invasions, and you look at all the innocent lives that died in Japan with the dropping of 2 nuclear bombs. And the argument is, yes, but look at how many lives it eventually saved.
Yeah, but I mean, Iran was nowhere near getting a nuclear weapons program. It wasn't capable of invading Israel. Wasn't capable of causing significant damage to the United States. All of the rationales given by Israel and the United States for their war on Iran, none of them stack up. And, I'm not on an island here when I'm saying this. I don't think there's a credible international lawyer anywhere on the planet who is saying that this war is anything other than illegal. And I've seen a series of comparisons about Vladimir Putin's justifications for his war against Ukraine, and they match up almost entirely with Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu's justifications for their war against Iran. Now, I think the Australian people aren't mugs, right? They can see bald-faced hypocrisy. They can see the way the world works. They don't believe Donald Trump or Benjamin Netanyahu give a rat's about the civil rights or the democratic institutions or the freedoms of Iranian women. I come back to this. Israel wants mass instability in the region so they can dominate as much as they want. They've had a long-term plan to destabilize Iran. They're engaging in that campaign now. That's what they want. The United States wants to ensure that there are no major oil suppliers that they don't control on the world so that they can control the world's energy flow and therefore have power over countries like Cuba, China, and others that they want to put pressure on. That's what this is about. And the rest of it is all just veneer, spin, self-serving justification. But the Iranian regime is wicked. It kills its own people. I 100% support people in Iran doing whatever they can to free themselves from a despotic regime. But right now, the people of Iran are facing a violent regime that is doubling down on the violence because of the foreign wars. They're facing Israeli bombs and missiles. They're facing US bombs and missiles, environmental disaster as a result of this war, the strangling of their economy, and in utter desperation. And, you know, this is a tragedy for the Iranian people. It's a tragedy for the people in the region. It's a tragedy for the world. And it was a war of choice by the United States and Israel.
Let me ask you this, because this puzzles me, and call me naive. But if Donald Trump is so concerned about the nuclear capacity of Iran, why isn't he paying attention to North Korea, which is unstable, run by a despot? And look at Russia and its involvement in Ukraine.
Well, I mean, right now, perhaps one of the biggest winners from this war is Russia. They're getting a massive boost in the price of their energy exports. They're getting, you know, a substantial economic windfall as a result of Donald Trump's war. But look, you ask why about why is the United States taking no action in relation to North Korea? If this really is a war about a nation state illegally having nuclear weapons in breach of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which, you know, prohibits countries from gaining nuclear weapons, if it's really about illegal nuclear weapons, can we just name the obvious, you know, the elephant sitting in the corner of the room? Israel has about 200, maybe more, illegal nuclear weapons. They've had them for decades. They're on a hair trigger. They're a significant threat to world peace, Israel's nuclear weapons program. And yet we're going to war with Israel to stop Iran getting its nuclear, well, allegedly, I don't believe it is, but allegedly to stop Iran getting its nuclear weapons. You know, there's a huge bloody elephant sitting in the corner of this room, and it's just, what is it, too rude to mention it?
Israel would argue, I'm not a spokesperson for the Israelis, but they would argue that their nuclear weapon program is there as a deterrent, and they've been pushed around for too many years, and they're armed to the teeth, and they're not going to be pushed around anymore.
Well, I mean, there's no evidence they're being pushed around. I mean, it's that they are the single largest aggressor in the region, and then that's not giving a get out of jail free for Iran's aggression or for the United States' aggression. But it'd be a contest, wouldn't it? Is the United States the largest aggressor in the region? Is it Israel? You know, maybe running in bronze is Iran. Those three nations are run by old, nasty, violent men who seem to want to engage in untold violence for their own political careers. So I don't see it as no one comes to this war with clean hands, and Australia should be nowhere near it.
Should Australia have sent the defence aircraft as support? Should Australia be involved? By the way, Anthony Albanese says he sent that aircraft as a request from the UAE, not from the United States. But your thoughts?
Well, if you believe that, I've got a big fat bridge in Sydney I'm going to sell you, Luke, where the Defence Minister admitted on 7:30 earlier this week that there'd been requests from both the United States and from the United Arab Emirates to send weapons and troops into it. So we got a request from the United States, we got a request from the United Arab Emirates, and now Anthony Albanese and Penny Wong and Richard Marles are saying, oh, no, but we didn't answer Donald Trump's thing. You know, we weren't responding to, you know, our indispensable bully, hegemonic ally. We were responding to this request from the United Arab Emirates, a country which we have to explain to you where it is and which we have no alliance with, no strategic interest with. I mean, that's just plainly, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a polite word other than bullshit, that line that's coming from the Albanese government. And to be entirely clear, there's no such thing as defensive assets in this war. We're sending an AWAC, early warning, military surveillance, observance aircraft in there. Its job is to do two things. One, we send that in so the US can send another one of theirs out into the war. They're scarce, expensive assets. They're much needed for the air war at the moment. We send one in, it frees up a US one to be used in the war of aggression. And also the AWACS not only pick up incoming threats, they also are able to direct outgoing threats. And when they pick up incoming threats and missiles, they also identify the place of origin of all of the missiles and ordnance coming in. And that information, that targeting information, will absolutely be integrated into the US military. Our entire operation in the Middle East can only happen if it's fully integrated into the US military. You can't just fly a surveillance plane into a hot war zone and hope it doesn't get shot down. It can only operate if it's surrounded by a cloud of US military interoperable with the US military, part of the US military, to pretend it's defensive is plain nonsense.
Senator Shoebridge, I appreciate your time, but there's more to talk about. Can we talk again soon? I wanted to talk about the Iranian soccer players, the women's soccer players being granted humanitarian visas versus the ISIS brides coming back to Australia from Syria. Perhaps we can get your humanitarian thoughts on that very soon.
Well, I'm very happy to do that, but I'll just on the Iranian the Iranian football players. On the same day that the Labor government gave visas to 5, maybe 6 brave Iranian women who obviously we should not be sending back to the regime, on the very same day, Labor shut the door to 7,200 other Iranians who had valid visas because they didn't want them coming to Australia and making asylum claims on shore. They did it on the same day. Photo opportunity, all this big media about protecting 5 women. And on the very same day, they introduced legislation to shut the door to 7,200 other Iranians because they didn't want anyone else to do what the Iranian football team did.
What was it all about them being good soccer players and maybe not Iranian citizens? Last question, because I know you've got to go. Last question. Matt Canavan is now leader of the Nationals. He's going to lead the Nationals from the Senate. There's a lot of criticism saying you can't lead a party like that from the Senate. How do you think he's going to go? Your thoughts? I'm going to talk to Matt Canavan next week.
Yeah, I don't think there's any issue about whether you're from the Senate or from the House of Representatives. People want to sort of fetishize the House of Representatives. They're welcome to do that. It doesn't seem a particularly useful chamber to me. It's not very democratic. You're an elected senator or elected MP. I don't think it matters too much. But I totally disagree with most of Matt's politics. Matt wants to stop us getting energy independence with renewable energy. I think he's part of a political movement that's never seen an illegal US war they don't want to join. Matt will do what Matt does. The Nats will choose who their leader is. It looks to me to be a pretty obvious response to the threat from One Nation. And I just hope that we don't see even more lurching to a sort of racist right in our politics.
Isn't it funny? Because One Nation's leader is also in the Senate. Do you think David Littleproud did a good job?
Oh, look, I'm the wrong person to judge. I'm a Green, right? I really carry a flame for what the National Party are doing. He resigned. He said he was exhausted. He looked pretty exhausted.
He did indeed. Yeah. Senator David Shoebridge, good to talk to you. We have more to talk about. Let's do it again soon.
We do. Happy to do that, Luke. Cheers.
So come on down to the man cave where the good times roll.
Guest Bill Edgar, the Coffin Confessor, private investigator, the man with an unbelievable story that is coming to, I shouldn't say Netflix, but coming to a mini-series on your screen on some platform very, very soon. Billy Edgar, welcome back to the Man Cave.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to see you guys.
And the Vice Captain, Adam McDonald from Evans Hastings, is also with us. Just before we jump into Bill and his thoughts on some of the topics I want to discuss today, we have the millennial with us, but she's not showing her face today. She's there in the background.
I'm sick.
She's not well. You on the mend? Are you better today than yesterday?
Yeah, I think so. But truth be told, I am in bed.
Okay.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. Well, we hope you get better very, very soon. Take 4 Nature B instead of 2. Vice Captain, before we, as I say, jump into Bill, Evans Hastings, your big car auction is happening tonight, so it'll be over by the time this is released. We did talk about that in great detail last time, and I can't wait to hear the results, and we'll probably do that next week. But you had a very, very interesting sale happen this week, and Bill, get this, Evans Hastings, they auction and buy and sell anything. Tell us about the caravan park.
We were contacted by a local caravan park here that had, I think there was maybe 20 or so demountable buildings that can sleep. Look, they're like a little dormitory. So went up online. They closed last night, and the sale netted a shade over $1.4 million. Like, for an auction room, I don't think I've ever worked in an auction room that's put a sale together that big. It was Benny. You all met Benny last week, our courageous CEO. Him and his team put it together, and it just went through the roof. And the way they sold it, absolutely perfect. Instead of selling the building and then another lot, the couches, the washing machines, whatever, they sold it as one lot. So we had caravan parks from all over the country buying these demountables. for $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. Like, it was an absolute screamer. Ben and his team really need to take a bow. It was, but like you said, Lukey, there's nothing we can't sell down here. That's what we do.
Well, it's good to hear that Evans Hastings is doing its part to solve the housing shortage.
There you go.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
There you go. Like these dormitories, like you can literally get a wide load truck, pick it up, put it on, and take it wherever you want.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had buyers in Victoria, we had buyers in South Australia, like buyers from all over the countryside, were getting involved in this sale. So it just goes to show that between Evans Hastings and Orbids, there's absolutely nothing we can't flog.
That's a great incentive, and that's great for the housing shortage and that. But I got to say, I'm pissed off with councils that come along and they tell you have to move them. I've had 3 of them in the last 10 years that I've purchased, just like yours, and for people to come and stay in, not even rent, just to stay in for housing shortage to help them out. And the council got word of it, obviously from a neighbour or some idiot, and then all of a sudden, council comes and says, no permit. We're not allowing permits. You can't have them on your property. You've got to get rid of them. So I turned them into garages.
Oh, it's interesting. It's
can live
interesting, isn't it? Last time I was in Sydney, I was driving through the inner west, and the amount of empty houses and shop fronts in that area is unbelievable. And they're just empty. And I don't know why people just don't open up and say, we've got nowhere to stay. You can come and stay here.
Yeah. And do you know the highest Did you know the highest vacancy rate in Sydney? We're talking about great houses, terrace houses with no one in them, is at Milson's Point. And
yeah, right.
I know. It is unbelievable. And I still to this day don't understand why. But council and red tape, I mean, if we do have a housing shortage, don't you reckon that councils should now say, okay, well, you can put a granny flat. You've got the room. Here's the minimum size of room. You can put a granny flat there and either put a tenant in there or your mum and dad or whatever. And wouldn't that go a long way to helping people out?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
For sure.
Council's all about red tape. They love that. They love that shit.
It's all about the money.
It's all about the money. But if we're serious about trying to do something about the housing shortage until we can build more affordable houses, and I'm not letting developers build, 30, 40, 50 high-rise apartments that will cost $2.5 million each. We're talking about affordability, aren't we? But no one wants affordable housing in their neighbourhood because, it'll attract the wrong sort of people.
Well, you know what?
That's what it comes down to.
I was the wrong sort of people in many people's eyes when I was younger too, in my 20s and 30s. So, it's just one of those things. You get over it and you move on. Don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah. Hey, listen, there's a couple of things I wanted to ask your opinion on because I'm perplexed at what's happening at the moment. Guys, do you remember just last week he had the big debate as to whether or not to let the so-called ISIS brides back into Australia? Vice Captain, you and I have talked about this, and we're talking about women who went with men back to Syria to support ISIS. Now they want to come back home, and there's pushback from both the government and the opposition to allow them back into Australia because they could have been radicalised, and it includes children as well. Well, can you just explain to me what's going on with the Iranian women soccer players? Now, Iran is a dictator, has been ruled for over 30 years by a ruthless dictator who's now gone, but another ruthless dictator, it looks as though, is taking his place. And the Iranian women's soccer team want refuge in Australia. And straight away we've said yes. Now, 5 players were given diplomatic visas, humanitarian visas. As of the recording of today's podcast, 2 more players have said, yes, please, we'll have that as well, and 2 officials. The government has, with open arms, said, yes, we will take these Iranian soccer players because they face persecution back home. What's the difference? And someone just explained to me why we say absolutely no to the ISIS brides, but we welcome the Iranian soccer players and so far 2 officials to stay here in Australia and stay here under humanitarian visas. Now, I was listening to the radio this morning and the friend or a billet of one of these players said that she is one of the people seeking asylum and has been given one of these visas, but has been told her family has been arrested in Iran and faces death. So there's a lot of pressure on these women to go back, and they will probably be arrested and put to death as well. What do you make of this? Who wants to go first? Because I'm having trouble getting my head around it.
It's pure and simple is because we're an absolutely sports mad country. You know, we care about sports more than anything else. That's all we want to do is sport. And if these women weren't playing sports, they'll be told no. But because they're sports people and they're good at playing a game, that's why we've said yes. It's pure and simple. There'll be no screening. There'll be no difference between them and the brides. But because they can kick a ball straight, that's why we've done it. It's ridiculous.
The thing is, the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister eventually said, yes, we will offer these visas to these women after having pressure put on them by none other than Donald Trump. There was a late-night phone call between Anthony Albanese and the Trumpster. 2 phone calls, as a matter of fact. Trump then tweets, God bless Australia. They're allowing these women to stay. But Trump has a very, very firm policy of saying no to anyone who has entered the country illegally. Now, these women came here on visas that allowed them to play soccer. I think it was against Korea here in Australia. But he's now putting pressure on our government to allow them to stay, but has a very firm policy of no way in America. What do you make of this, Billy?
Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate here and take politics out of it and think of the women themselves and think this is the choice they got. They stay, their family gets killed, they go home, they get killed. It's going to be a very hard decision for them, obviously. Okay, difference between these people and the ISIS brides, these people aren't doing war. They're not electing to support the war. They're not electing to support their partners in a war. So, you know, it's just, there is a difference there. However, I gotta say that I agree with you. Sport. It is for me, sport is gambling, and that's all it ever is nowadays. So I don't even tolerate that side of it. However, I feel that this may set a precedent for the Olympic Games, okay? Because it's going to happen. It will happen. We've had it in the past.
Or any international sporting event, whether it be the World Cup, the Olympic Games, anything.
It's going to happen. Yeah, and you won't stop it. It will happen.
Kelsey, do you want to comment on this, Kelsey, or are you staying put?
I think all of you are right. More, I guess, digestible because they're sports stars. But I also think, like Bill said, like at the end of the day, these are still women that need help. I think it's more digestible to the Australian public that they're sports stars. But I think this has got nothing to do with sports. I think it's got to do with Australia doing something that Trump wants so Australia can get into Trump's good graces, or Albo can get into Trump's good graces. I don't think this has got anything to do with, you know, doing things for the greater good. I think this has got to do with a political game of chess. But either way, I'm happy that the women are safe. Just
because they play sports doesn't mean they're not supporting the war effort over there, you know? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Is there screening? Is there background checks, or they're just, they can play a game, let's get them in?
We can't have one set of rules for one group of people and not for the other, you know?
But we do.
Yeah, but the whole world's divided. I mean, there's, you can see that in every society and every form of life, is that you have people that get off from crimes because there's somebody or something, you know, and that's just part of life. That's what it is. But as far as what you just said, Kelsey, as far as, Trump says something and we jump, I think Australia has to understand how much we are influenced by US more than the UK. I mean, you only got to look at Australia's spy network called Pine Gap. It's owned by America. It's one of the largest in the world. We are the central hub for America to be able to go to certain places and do certain things. And hardly any of Australians know about this place, you know, so they say something, we jump. It's always been that way. It's just more in your face now because of the internet.
Yeah, that's very true.
So if the ISIS brides were good at sport, would there be any question?
I'd say so, because they're still supporting their partners over in another country, where I'm still saying that these women that are playing sport, getting away from it, but it'd be a terrifying, absolutely. Can you imagine sitting there at the moment, take all the shit aside, you're sitting there at the moment by yourself and you're thinking, Mum and dad are going to get arrested or killed if I go home.
Yeah.
I get killed. What do I do? It'd be devastating. It'd be so heartbreaking for them.
This is what happens in North Korea, which is such another evil place. And by the way, it's funny how Trump is hell-bent on Iran because it has, or it may have, nuclear weapons. So does Russia. And look what Russia's done in Ukraine. And North Korea, run by an absolute lunatic, and North Korea has nuclear capacity.
Yeah, but it's all about the money. You got to follow the money. It's all about the money. I mean, there's certain objectives and things, and you can say, oh, they've got minerals, oil, all this stuff. And that all comes down to money. And, North Korea and other places like that, and Russia, they have certain things and value to the Americans a lot more than what, Iran does. Because at the end of the day, Iran's wiped out. The neighbouring countries that are supporting the US will be the ones that rebuild that country, despite what Trump says. It will happen.
Vice Captain, you're in Canberra. Now, Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and a lot of regional Australia, they're claiming that they're running out of petrol and diesel, especially in regional Australia, where it takes a fair bit of organisation to get there. Now, the government is saying no need to panic buy. The fuel that we are expecting, the deliveries we're expecting are all on course. They've arrived on time. The majority of our fuel goes to Singapore, but then is stored, believe it or not, we have an agreement with America. Why we can't store fuel here and be self-sufficient is beyond me. That's another question you guys might have an answer to. But they're saying that the reason that some bowsers are running dry is because people are panicking, a bit like toilet paper during COVID. Do you believe the government? The government says we have 32 days of fuel here in Australia and the deliveries are still coming. But people are saying bowsers are drying up. Where's the truth in all of this?
Who knows? Like they can spin whatever they want to spin to us. Who knows? Like at the end of the day, if people start panic buying and stocking up, who knows what the truth is? Like this is the problem where with issues like how much fuel we've got and how much we've got in reserve. We don't really know. So the bigwigs, they know, and they can feed us whatever they want. And at the end of the day, we've got no fucking idea. Bill Edgar, should petrol stations, until this calms down, put a limit on how much petrol someone can buy? Say, okay, only $50 or say $60 or 50, I don't care, find a figure. Should there be a limit until this calms down on how much petrol one person can buy in one stop?
Yeah, hard question to answer, but yeah, I mean, rationing anything comes with a price to pay later on too, doesn't it? My issue is that you're not hearing from BP or anyone like that. You're hearing from independents mainly, and I think to myself, okay, well, the independents, are they drying up because they don't want to pay the price at the moment? Are they waiting for something to happen? Is it again all about the money? Personally, rationing food, rationing fuel, rationing things like that sort of sounds to me like we're going to war.
This is it, isn't it? I mean, what's bubbling around in the background and what the government's got planned, and they know what moves they're going to make, and the next 5 steps. They don't feed that to us. So you've exactly nailed it, Billy. We might be going, and they said, we've got to pull up stumps. We've got to be careful of what we're doing because we're about to, we're about to get into a fight.
Well, we are sending, quite a lot over there at the moment, and just in the few days they've announced that we're sending stuff. But again, I don't believe troops on the ground are even relevant these days with all the drones and all the stuff that's going on. And, people are saying, oh, there should be subscription. What for? We can't, even if you send troops on the ground, they're annihilated straight away through the drone. So, but you're right. Anything in the background, we're not going to know about. And it's just a race you've got to run on your own. I don't believe in storing heaps of fuel yourself, but I do believe in topping the car up when it's even half a tank, and doing certain things for yourself. Look after yourself first, then you'll be able to look after your family. Anything else, collateral damage. It is what it is.
You're right. ground troops these days, it's like screen door on a bloody submarine. Like it does. Hand-to-hand combat will never ever exist again because of the technology and the drones and the weaponry that mankind use on each other these days. So it's irrelevant. Yeah, we're going to send troops. It's horseshit.
It is funny because historically, no major war has been won by air power alone. The biggest recent example, well, Afghanistan, Timor, but look at Vietnam. I mean, the VCs didn't have an air force, and America got beaten. But Australia has sent an E-7A Wedgetail, and it's departed its base at Williamstown, which is just north of Newcastle, and it's bound for the Persian Gulf. We have a fleet of 6 of these things, and we have responded to a call for help, not from America, but according to the Prime Minister, from the UAE. Australia has now become directly or indirectly involved, not boots on the ground as they call it, but we're sending some form of support. We also supported Ukraine in its ongoing battle with Russia. How involved do you think Australia should be in all of this?
Oh, as much as New Zealand is. Fuck all.
Yeah, I don't know why we put our big boy pants on and got to get involved. Like, we're all the way down here. What happens between other countries means actually jack shit to us. We just like you said, Billy, we just be like New Zealand and just chill out. We don't need to be involved in this stuff.
Boots on the ground. Should Australia get involved? Please give us some feedback. What do you make of this? 0291 289311. We'd love to hear your voice if you want to drop us a voice message. I had to say, I had a funny thought the other day about a conversation Donald Trump had with French's Emmanuel Macron. And I imagine Trump saying to the French president, listen, we need your help with the war in Iran. And Macron saying, well, we don't want to get involved. We don't want to send troops. He said, I'm not asking you to send troops. I want your advice on how to advise them to surrender. Anyway, Bill, the book and the miniseries, where are we at?
Well, I've just been in Japan, believe it or not, and I've been speaking to quite a few people over there. I had an invite and went over and ended up making a holiday of it and took the whole family over and did a bit of skiing and things. But I've got to say, I'm one of these people. I love our country. I love travelling our country. I bought a caravan and I've said to many people, and you've got to travel down under before you end up down under. And it's true, but other countries are nice to travel. In Japan, and I've got to also say, it was scary at the airport coming home.
Why?
Right? Because people are stuck at airports through Qatar Airways that aren't running and flying. And you're hearing all this nervousness. And then people are saying, well, let's fly to Australia. And then all the flights are booked to go to Australia. And it's heartbreaking to see what's going on. But at the same time, you start to panic yourself because you're thinking, geez, I hope, we're not even close to them, but we're still affected. Even Japan's affected. Everyone's affected in the airline industry. Everyone's affected. It was pretty full on. It was good to get home and touch Australian soil, put it that way.
This was another debate I saw on social media, that for those Australians that are stuck because airlines won't fly over that dangerous airspace, should the Australian government, that is also the Australian taxpayer, be funding RAF aircraft to fly them back home? And you would think, well, yeah, they're Australians, but they're over there possibly on a holiday. And should they have to pay that back like a HEX loan when they get back to Australia?
Yeah, I can't see a big issue with that, especially if they can get the insurance money back for the flight. If they can get the insurance money back for their return flight, forward that on to the, to the flight that they're going to get on. I mean, that's a no-brainer for me.
I wonder, Vice Captain, if the sudden outbreak of war is, if it's covered in your travel insurance.
It's not. I saw on the news the other day, that's like null and void on insurance claims, because on the insurance company side, it's not just one person affected by war. It's everyone that's overseas all at the same time would be able to make a claim. And so that's why they say you can't make a claim based on wartime.
Mm.
Wow.
I
wonder what bill you'd be stuck with then, considering you've already paid for your airfare, but the plane's not there.
I would not like to work in air the air industry.
No.
And in your current state, they're pretty pleased you're not working for them either.
Yes. Bill, I was just scrolling through your Facebook page and I saw this meme that you put up and I just wanted to share it with the boys. Now, this is obviously after the former Prince, I don't know, Andrew Mountbatten, and it says, famous paparazzi photo. Oh, I'm so effed. Get me the Coffin Confessor. I ain't going alone. What are your thoughts on this?
That's very funny.
Yeah, it was a spur of the moment thing. I saw his face in the back of the camera. I thought, you know what? That's exactly what I'd be thinking. I'd be thinking like, who the can I get back? I got to get out of this hole I've dug myself.
I'm taking someone with me.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I think it's very funny. But where is Sarah Ferguson? And I bet you the royal family are absolutely shitting themselves with the dirt that she's going to spill because she is so desperate for money, she will sell her dirt story to anyone, and people will buy it and read it, won't they?
Of course they will. People love that type of gossip and that type of shit going on, of course. And if they start dropping truth bombs about the family, and the biggest truth bomb I want to hear is about Diana. But anyway, that won't happen. Yeah. But it'd be good to know.
Do you reckon that's why the royal family kept quiet about Andrew, and everyone knew what he was up to for a long time? Do you reckon that's why they kept quiet, Vice Captain, because they were scared that he and Sarah were going to take a lot of royal shit down with them?
Well, I think there'd be a lot of people nervous about what Andrew knows. He was obviously Jeff's right-hand man, and he was neck deep in everything. And I think there'd be a lot of people very, very nervous about whether he goes quietly or he just says, you know what, I'm not going alone. And I hope he does. I hope he dobs everybody in. I really do. I just hope he just sits there for 3 days and just spills his guts.
How much do you reckon their daughters, the princesses, they still have that title, Beatrice and Eugene or Eugenie? I mean, when they went to visit Epstein with their mother, one was 19, one was 21. They were both adults, and they went to see a convicted pedophile. How much of their parents' behaviour and how much do you reckon these daughters know? Are they involved at all, or am I just going overboard on the royal pylon?
I don't know. They'd have to know something. You'd have to know what your dad's a bit of a dad's a bit of a creep and he hangs out with other creeps. So surely they'd know something. Maybe they wouldn't know what length or depth that he was in, but they'd know something.
So back to the book and the series.
Yeah, so I met I've been meeting with a writer who wrote for The Simpsons, who actually loves the concept, the idea, and and as far as the American-based side of it, with Ted Gold and Kobe Rowe, they've also engaged writers for the drama series, and it's exciting, but I'd like to publicly announce what's happening, but, under contractuals and things like that, I can't. They'll do all that, and I'll be excited when they do. But I've spoken to and met with some beautiful people and actors and actresses and writers and directors, and it's been a buzz. It's been a real, it's great. Different world to us, though.
Is it still true that Bryan Cranston is going to play you?
Oh, I can't confirm or deny, but I can tell you that Brian's been in touch and they've spoken to him.
How exciting.
Bill, with the Coffin confessing, is it always bad, or is there points where someone's going to pass and they said, I want to profess my undying love to my brother's wife or something like that? Is it always bad, or is there points where it's, a loving gesture rather than the get square?
Yeah, absolutely. There's more, obviously there's more, confessions about infidelity and things like that and what they've done in their lives and that. But there are the moments where you get some beautiful messages and you leave some people in tears because, for instance, this lady, she's been married for 30 years and her best friend of 50 years, she was madly in love with and she wanted to be with. But in those days you couldn't, it was absolutely taboo to do that with, two women. And it wasn't until she died that she actually revealed this, true fantasy and love that she had for her friend, when a friend turned around and said, I had exactly the same feelings. And we just couldn't say it.
Too late.
And it was 30 years too late. It's just so sad, but such a beautiful thing. And the husbands, they were quite open with it and quite, they sort of knew, but they never, But yes, there is some beautiful things. I got to say, one of the beautiful, touching things that I've done lately is I deliver gifts from the afterlife. And this young bloke had passed away. And prior to him passing away, he always played chess on a Sunday with his dad, always, his elderly father. And he said to me, can you deliver this electronic chessboard to my father on the first Sunday after my passing, and let him know that I'm waiting to play? And, oh man.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Incredible. So this elderly man now sits every Sunday and he plays chess electronically with his son. It's just a beautiful thing. Yeah. But then you have the odd one where, I did have to deliver a sex toy with an engraving on it saying your husband wasn't very good in bed to a lady that,
Elaborate. What happened? Tell us the story.
Yeah. So a lady had come to me and she said, I need a sex toy engraved with the words, because we both know your husband's shit in bed, and I want you to deliver it to this lady after I've passed. I want you to make sure that the lady and her husband are home at the same time. So all that was done, and it was delivered to this lady. Went down like a lead balloon. But the twist of this story is the lady that actually gave me the toy to be engraved is actually a man dressed as a woman. So the wife actually found out that her husband was having an affair, but also with a transvestite.
Well,
for 3 years.
This is amazing.
Yeah. And this went on for 3 years. This actual bloke who was married with kids, it kept telling this lady that he was going to leave his wife and kids and be with her. For 3 years, he dragged them along. He deserved what he got in the end.
Bill, what else I want to touch on is your other side of being a PI, a private investigator. I've always been told that women make better private investigators than men because they sort of blend into the background more. But I guess, my idea of a private investigator is a cloak and a hat, and you're sneaking around following people. But I'm guessing it's not like that.
No, no, not at all. I'm more the Tom Selleck type. I got to say though, women, you think of private investigators and you think of following the cheating husband or the cheating wife. And I've met women private investigators that actually coerce other women to go up to the man and put their arm around him just so they can take photos and evidence so they can go back to the wife and say, oh yeah, this happened. And that's a putrid part of the industry. And there's a lot of that goes on. So I don't get into any of that. I literally came up with a whole concept for PI for my own self because I didn't want to go into that world. And what I did is I found out there was a general managers meeting of hotels, and I went to this meeting and I gave my cards out to the general managers and I said, look, in 6 weeks, you employ me for 6 weeks as a security guard, a bed cleaner, a dish hand, whatever it is, and I'll find out who's stealing and what the gossip is in your hotel. One of them took it up. And it was a big firm. Just one of them took it out. Out of the 300 people, they won. And then that one took me on for 6 weeks and gave me a really good wage. And in 4 weeks, I found out where all the linen was going, all the food was going, what security was stealing what. I was engaged as a dish hand. So I was there, washing dishes for 6 weeks. And on the 6th week, after I got to know everybody, I threw a pot in the air and I went, I hate this place. I quit and I walked out. A week later, I had all my evidence and everything together, and I went and saw the general manager in private, and I said, look, this is all the evidence. This is what I've got. He's reviewed it, looked at it, come back to me, and he says, wow. He says, I'd like to employ you every 6 months to do our hotels, and that's what I've been doing.
Wow. That right there, Vice Captain, is a TV series. That's a TV series.
My whole life is a TV series.
Being a dish pig, you find everything out because in the kitchens everybody talks. You're the lowest of the low. So there's no fear of reprisals. Like I'm going to tell the dish pig that I'm pinching linen because what's he going to do?
Exactly.
Like, it's not going to go any further. It's genius. It's genius in its simplicity.
Yeah, and it was quite a easy concept and idea to come up with. And what happened is security used to come up to us like, I'd be working till, say, 11 a.m. washing dishes, and security would come up and they'd go, "Oh, do you know where the key is to the freezer so we can have a feed?" And I'd go, "Oh, I know where it is, but we'll get in trouble." "Oh, no, don't worry about it. Come in with us and have some prawns and salmon and all this stuff." So I was doing everything they were doing and enjoying all the benefits of all this side hustle. And then all of a sudden I saw the security guys and some of the cleaners, they used the pillowcases as bags. And they'd be dropping them down the chute, and then the security would get the pillowcases and put them somewhere, and then the cleaners would leave, and it was just rife. And this goes on in every hotel, every one.
Did you have to video it while you were doing it for evidence?
A lot of the times I do video, regardless if they're wanting me to or not, but I do. And I do this specifically for my own detriment, so I can't be convicted or anything like that. So the contract's pretty secure. And like anything I do, even when I speak to somebody that's on their deathbed, I video everything. So I've got evidence and proof. If somebody wants me to go to their home and remove sensitive items they don't want their family and friends to find, it's got to be contractual plus video. So that way when the police rock up and they go, "Hey, you're breaking in, you're not allowed to do that," I'll play the video, my client who's on their deathbed, in hospital, wherever they are, allowing me and giving me the keys to go and access their property. So everything's on video that I do. The only thing I don't do, and this is something that a lot of people say I should do, but I don't. And I do this mainly because my integrity and everything else, but I will not film myself crashing a funeral. Anybody else can film me. I don't give a fuck. I've had people reach out and say, "Oh, look, I'm going to sell this video if you don't pay me." I don't give a fuck. It's not, mate. I don't care what you do. But I will not personally film myself crashing a funeral because my client is deceased. Anybody else there, I have no care or concern about. It's my client's in the coffin now. So, I will not film myself for the pleasure of getting likes, shares, or media attention. I won't do that.
How do you get into how did the PI work start? Like you wake up one morning and go, I might give this a lash. Like I know with my life, I sort of evolved from a bricklayer and a tradesman into the antiques and collectible game, which is chalk and cheese. But how do you like? If I woke up tomorrow morning and said I want to be a PI, what do I do?
Yeah, it's a pretty stringent course nowadays, and it was sort of back then too. But I touch on the law a lot. I do a lot of, I look at the law, I read it, I read all the complex things, and I sort of go through it because I do walk a very fine line, but I try not to cross it, but it is a fine line. For me personally, how I got into it is I have gone through every job you can think of, by standing on the doors of nightclubs to bricklaying to roofing, tiling, you name it. And then all of a sudden I fell into the legitimate side of debt collecting. And I was working for this company on the Gold Coast that was collecting debts. And I was in an office and I was collecting all these debts, and I was raking in hundreds of thousands of dollars a week for this company. And then this lady said, "Look, I don't know the debt." And this bloke would say, "I don't know the debt. Can you look into it?" And then when I'd say to the boss, "Look, I'd like to look into this," he'd say no. But I did look into it because these people were heart-sold. And then I found out the debt was insured and written off prior to it being sold by the bank to the debt collection company. And when I questioned that, I got sacked. Wow. I got terminated. So what I did is I started up a company called Freedom from Debt Collectors. And I had hundreds of people come to me and say, "Look, I've got this debt." And then I went to ASIC, the ATO, and they said, "Look, unless you have a background, you're not going to get anywhere. You've got to have something." And I said, "Well, like what?" And they said, "Well, you've got to be a financial controller or somebody with ethics." And I went, "Oh, fuck, I'm telling you, I'm trying to blow the whistle." And they said, "No, not going to happen. It's a bank. It's okay." So what do? I went and I became a private investigator in the financial world. And that's what I did. I started to investigate banks, and the banks ended up turning around and taking me to ASIC for investigating them. And then ASIC said, "We can't do anything. He's a licensed private investigator. What do you want to do?" That's what I've been doing for years now. You know what, when a car's been written off, it can be repaired as a repairable write-off. debts are exactly the same. You can have a $500,000 debt that has been written off, underwritten by the banks, and then sold again by the banks to a debt collection company for $40. And then that debt collection company can come after you for $500,000, the original part of the debt. The courts will allow that to happen because the court system believes the banks and the financial institutions over you. So, and you haven't got the money to fight it anyway. And they know that you're in debt at $2,000. You haven't got $4,000 to fight it. And what's the point? But I come in and I prove that the debt was sold prior to it being underwritten. That's illegal. And then all of a sudden the bank will get in touch with me, or the debt collector will get in touch with me, or the debt consolidator will get in touch with me, and they'll say, oh, we apologize. This debt was sold in error. We've now revoked that debt. But what I found is that debts are sold in pools. They're not sold individually. So 100 debts are sold in a pool. And that 100 debts could be sold to a debt collector for $500,000, but that pool could hold $20 million of debt. Now, that debt collector only has to get 3 or 4 people to start paying.
Yeah.
They make their money.
So it seems to me that that part of it is very forensic, and you've got to have the right brain for that. I kind of thought, like Adam, that being a PI was sort of cloak and dagger and legwork. And people saying, I think my wife or I think my husband's having an affair. How much of PI work is stirred on by infidelity?
Most of it. So there's only 2 segments, in the PI world, and that's basically insurance claims and the world of infidelity. Yeah, they're the main 2 that most PIs fall into. I got to say that 95% of PIs are ex-police officers, detectives. 95% of them are. I'm probably the only criminal that's become a debt collector in the time in the history. I've been a PI in the history. I mean, it took me a long time to get to where I am. I had to prove that I was of good character. I've now been a private investigator for 14 years. And it's not, you have to obviously study and do your things every year, and you have to renew it too every couple of years, and that costs thousands.
Is there good money in it?
There is in what I do. I don't do the other shit. I create my own work, and there is good money in what I do. I've found a lot of people try to copy what I've done, especially like the Coffin Confessor. Around the globe now, people are trying to copy it and do it, and they reach out to me and they go, I need help. I can't do it. Well, you can't do it because you're not me. That's right. Pretty simple for me. That's how it is. In the world that you come from, bricklaying and working, and, there's 100,000 bricklayers, but out of that 100,000 bricklayers, there's only probably 5,000 that are really, really good at it.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
When you're chasing someone's concerns about infidelity, how often are they correct?
Yeah, look, I have to go down this road because, especially being the Coffin Confessor, someone will say, look, I slept with my neighbor and I need this all out when I die, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. So I have to investigate that, and I go into it, and I've found probably 3 occasions where the person was lying on their deathbed. They just want to doubt this person, so this person had a miserable life after they're gone. And so this is where my investigations are very important. I'm not going to go and crash a funeral and say, oh, Jake slept with Mary and she's pregnant to his kids when she wasn't, and I could destroy a whole family. You know what I mean? So I'm very, very careful and cautious what I do. But when you get into that seedy side of the infidelity world, it's quite amazing, because I always think to myself, I've been with my wife 42 years. We met when we were 15. 42 years I've been with my wife. And I say to people, the quickest way a man can up his whole life, relationship and everything is his own dick.
Yeah.
For 5 minutes of pleasure. That's the quickest way a man can up his whole life. But I got to say, probably in the last 5 years, women have really stepped up. The amount of women that have now confessed or been caught out having affairs is just unbelievable. And I got to say, it's not the young women either. It's the women that have going through menopause, post, pre, or during menopause. I find that amazing, because my wife's been through that and gone through it, and now, on the other side of it. And I know how bad it is. And people say, the women go through everything. But if you're a loving, trusting, caring husband, you go through that shit as well. it's hard. But I got to say, a lot of women that I've come in touch with, and investigated, they're all in their, mid-40s to late 50s.
You said, what's the point in ruining your whole life for 5 minutes of pleasure? And I was just going to ask, how do you make it last 5 minutes? Anyway.
Ha, 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 ha.
What's the most shocking job as far as being a PI is concerned? What's the most shocking result you've ever uncovered?
Oh, I can't name the retailer, but it's a national retailer. It was a total accident on my part. I was investigated to look into a warehouse theft. I was sitting in a container, shipping container, and I was counting with a gun that does all the barcodes, and I was counting all the TVs, all this stuff that came in, computers, TVs, and I'd scan it all, and it was all correct. And I thought, okay, well, that shipping container's all right. And I have a pen, and I was writing down exactly what I was doing, and I had the pen in my mouth, and I was flicking it, and then all of a sudden the pen flicked out, and it flicked over 3 boxes, and I had to crawl over the 3 boxes to get my pen. And as I crawled up, the 2 boxes were sturdy. The 3rd box collapsed. It was empty. Every 3rd box was empty. So the managers at the stores, they were scanning the boxes, but not actually physically picking the boxes up to find out what was in them, because they'd be on a forklift and just delivered. So what was happening is I started to find out the iron, kettles, hair dryers, all that stuff, empty boxes, a lot of them. And this was in every department store, and the managers were getting the blame for theft, or the floor staff were getting blamed for theft. And this all occurred by an accident. I got to say, the people that were let go because of this incident, it was heartbreaking to talk to them, because they never stolen a thing in their life. They did nothing wrong.
Yeah, that's tough, man.
So really tough.
Who was taking them?
It was actually it was actually on the ship. So when it was all coming over, they were accessing the containers. And not only that, some of the containers were being loaded in certain places, and they were loaded empty. Like, they'd have, say, 150-inch TVs, and only 75 of them would come over, but they're all boxed together, they all look nice, they're all strapped and tied together. But the empty boxes were delivered, and then all of a sudden the manager would blame somebody at the store and say, hey, listen, you were the last person, you took this TV, and they'd be like, I didn't take anything.
It's funny you should say that, because I used to be friends with a bloke who worked at a large retail store. I won't mention it on the podcast, but I'll happily tell you when the mics are off. And he had a gambling problem that no one knew about. I didn't know about it. I mean, a serious gambling problem, most of it pokies. And he was the manager of the electrical outdoor section of this large retailer. And he got himself into just over $800,000 in debt. And he used to sell TVs, for example, for cash. But there was no box. And when the people doing the stock take from Sydney came up to the warehouse, exactly that. Yeah. They were scanning empty boxes in the warehouse. The TVs had been sold for cash. Of course he was going to get caught eventually, but he thought if he gambled enough, he could win it back and fix everything up. And, of course, it never happened. And to my knowledge, he is still on the run. And I'll tell you who the retailer is when the microphones are off. And it's a true story.
Yeah, no doubt it is. No doubt it is. I mean, I know of a couple myself that have done exactly the same thing.
I don't understand how you think you're going to get away with it. Even if you win the money back, the TVs are still gone. Like, it's just a suicide
gambling
mission.
thing. It's the mindset of a gambler. You know, I detest gambling. I detest it more so, not because I've done it, fallen into it, and I have, for a very short time. I hate losing a dollar. I hate it more so because I heard my mother was a prolific gambler, which she was, but I heard later on in life that she slept in the car park of the casinos, and then it just, go back in and then sleep in the car. And then it's just a horrible, disgusting life, and the lies and the cheats and the betrayal. And I got to say to any gambler out there right now going through all that shit, the best thing you can do is go and confront it. Tell your wife, tell your husband, tell them what's going on, accept the consequences, get help, stop, because all you're doing is you're helping the pubs, the gambling associations, the taxes. You're doing everything wrong by yourself. You know, every cent you put in there, you're taking away from yourself.
Luckily, it's one advice I don't have, but what really I don't mind people having a bet on the result of a horse race or the result of a sporting match. What really concerns me is exotic betting, where you can bet on not just the spread, but what wicketkeeper will drop how many balls in an over, or how many no balls will be bowled in that over, or how many fouls will Kyrie Irving get in this particular basketball game. That, to me, exotic betting leads to corruption.
Well, that's right. And but that's part of TAB own the sports now.
It's so easy now. All you need is an app. And while the sport is actually going, you can be betting.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I actually just met a lady, her husband hired me to investigate, and she had 4 apps for Keno. I didn't even know what the hell that was until it's like Gold Lotto, but it's in real time, you know. And she had 4 apps on her phone, or 2 on her phone, 2 on her iPhone. She had this, I think it was $8,000 a week she'd gone through. It's incredible. And then one week she made $24,000, and she's all happy, but she lost like 10 grand the next week, and then 5 grand came in, and then lost 8 grand, and then it was just absolute nightmare.
What I would like to do is, on a separate podcast, I'd like to do a little bit more on Australia's gambling problem. It's a massive problem because it leads to not just heartbreak but also suicide.
It does. I had a dear friend. His father gambled away the family's fortune and took his own life. It's a real thing.
Oh yeah.
Why don't we do a separate podcast on gambling? I did it when we first started the Bonafide podcast with the Reverend Costello, who's not anti-gambling, but he's certainly anti-exotic betting. And maybe we can look into this a little bit closer because I don't understand it. I'm not a gambler. But for example, if you guys came over to my man cave and we're having a game of pool and you wanted to make it interesting, let's play $10 a rack. It makes the game interesting, or $5, or, you know, whatever. But it's people who don't know where to stop. And I've often been told by experts, if you start gambling and you're lucky and you get a big win early, that can ruin you.
Yeah, no doubt.
I don't mind having a punt, like if you're having a punt on the football or, you know, a boxing match or whatever.
On the result. On the result,
or a horse race. Like you've studied the guide, you know, this horse runs well in the wet. You know, it's at Moonee Valley. But what I don't get is the pokies. Like you're just pressing the button. It is strictly designed.
So antisocial. It is so antisocial. It is awful. You go into one of those pokey rooms. They're dark. They're smoky, and it's full of lonely, desperate people.
Yeah, you go into them now. They've got phone chargers where you can sit your phone on the charge, so you do not have to move.
Yeah, I don't even go into them.
People have got into fights because they think that machine's mine.
Yeah, probably.
People have been known to piss their pants other than leave the machine.
But it is worth doing a podcast on and getting into it, and yeah, for sure, it's something that.
Well, I've had the Reverend Tim Costello on before, and maybe I should get him back, and the three of us can have a separate chat, or we can do a separate chat on Australia's gambling problem, because it's a very, very dark and murky.
It's nowhere else in the world. No one else in the world plays pokies like we do.
No, we have more poker machines per capita than anywhere in the world, more than Las Vegas. Yeah, I know. It is unbelievable. And the governments are very hesitant to do anything about it because they create such an enormous amount of revenue. It's a bit like, why don't you ban smoking if it's so bad for you? No, we'll put the excess up.
It's also a thing that people hide. It's very well hidden. A lot of people will gamble at these places and at places that no one knows them, or they'll drive, miles to go and gamble so they're not in the area of, and it's a very secretive, silent killer, really. It really is. I mean, I remember talking to Alfie Langer, the footy player. He was bad at the horse races years ago. It just happens, and it's sad that it happens. And then when they're exposed, it's like a shock, a wake-up call, a kick in the face. But sometimes that's what's needed.
Well, it's a topic for another day. Listen, guys, thank you so much for being part of the Man Cave today. Once again, we went a bit sideways. Can't wait to see I can't say Netflix because we don't know what platform, but I can't wait to see how you.
I don't even know what it is.
It's so cool, man.
It is really, really cool. You're one of the coolest cats I've ever met. And thank you so much, Billy Edgar.
No, thank you for having me. Great to chat. And let's chat again soon.
Vice Captain Evans Hastings, what do you got coming up?
Oh, there's always something happening at Evans Hastings. We're going to have a look at another huge collection of vintage cars. Benny, our fearless leader, is going out there today, out to Gunning or somewhere like that, kind of local, but I think there might be 10 really high-end vintage cars. So the car market's working really well for us, so we're gonna start chasing it hard.
Well, if you get an XA, XB, XC coupe, let me know.
I'll come across one. I'll give you a whistle, no worries. We'll find you one.
That. I've got 3 of them, but I'd like another one.
An XA, an XB or an XC 2-door Falcon with the nostrils would be the only Ford I'd allow in my driveway.
Oh, that's good. I'm invited then.
I wouldn't allow one.
Hey, listen, do you want to know a true story, Bill Edgar?
Yeah,
do you know how to double the price of any Ford instantly?
Oh, no, go on. Tell me.
Fill it up with petrol.
Okay. Yeah, well, you know what? I bought my XB Falcon for $6,000 years ago, and I recently sold 2-door coupe, right, at GS, and I recently sold it at auction for $148,000.
There you go. Muscle cars.
Yeah.
It's where it's at.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, myself and the Millennial and the Minister for War and Finance, we recently went to Bathurst to the Motor Racing Museum, and there's a picture of me. You'll see it there on Facebook. We actually hunted down, we saw the Alan Moffat 1977.
Yeah.
Remember that was an XCGS
Number 1 and 2. Yeah.
1 and 2. It was the Moffat Ford dealers team. There's a picture of me in front of Alan Moffat's car that came number 1.
Beautiful car.
Colin Bond.
Colin Bond, that's
car.
right.
Yeah. Okay, and the Mad Max car, of course.
And you know who was a big supporter of mine, and it's sad that he's passed this week. It was Agro, Jamie.
Jamie Dunn.
You know, Jamie was a great supporter of mine, and we spoke a bit, and we even spoke about Coffin confessing at one stage, and he had a lot to confess, but he said, I'm going to take it with me. He said, only me and Agro know.
Yeah, way too young, 75 years of age. Jamie Dunn, the voice and the heart behind Agro, Australia's most famous puppet. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Millennial. We'll be back for another chat very, very soon. In the meantime, you have a great day, great time. Please, folks, share, like, give us some feedback, and we'll get back to you. Thank you so much for coming along for episode 89 and our live broadcast coming up on Thursday. I'm going to learn about it as we go because Kelsey and Thomas are in charge. I'll just do as I'm told. We'd love your participation. Keep watching our socials for information on how you can get involved because your participation is compulsory.
Any thought of the day or no thought of the day?
No, but I was just saying to someone the other day, look, my daughter Kelsey and my daughter Holly said, you're old and grumpy. And I said, well, I might be old and grumpy, but I'm not mean. I mean, seriously, when I tell someone to go to hell, I really do hope they get there safely.
Very good. Bye.